Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Evil Sailing Group. My crew is from another world. Chapter 21. Glancing at the marine warship behind the thick black smoke, Tiandalpain slowly stepped forward 2 steps, and said in a cold tone, "I'll take care of them." But this time, Zhang Jie stopped Tiandalpain's actions in an abnormal way, and said slowly, "No, I will do it this time." Hearing that Zhang Jie was going to take action himself, Hungry Wolf and the others were obviously stunned for a moment, and called out with some uncertainty. "Boat, Captain, these ant-like guys are not qualified to let you take action, Captain, let me deal with them." Hungry Wolf rolled up his sleeves, looking eager to try. But even so, Zhang Jie still refused with a smile. "No, I need to confirm some conjectures." Hungry Wolf and the others were slightly taken aback when they heard this. "Guess, can't we do it for you?" Zhang Jie shook his head. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crew, he slowly stepped forward to look at it, and at the same time slowly reached out to grab the long knife hanging from his waist. Clang, accompanied by a crisp buzzing sound. The long knife hanging from his waist was slowly unsheathed. Zhang Jie stood in front of the bow, holding a long knife in one hand, and looked at the approaching marine warship from a distance. This scene made Jaina and other marines in the rear look puzzled. What does he want to do? Is this going to stop the second round of shelling? A person too. It was also when all the marines were discussing in low voices. The aura around Zhang Jie suddenly changed. Buzz. A deafening hum reverberated. Waves of rippling air waves arrived, centered on Zhang Jie, and spread in all directions. An incomparably powerful aura enveloped the entire sea area in an instant. Boom. From the rear, Jaina's pupils who felt a strong aura suddenly slapped her hand. Breathing subconsciously stopped. Also at the same moment, Smoker is on the marine warship. Smoker's expression changed suddenly when he felt the sudden terrifying aura. This breath. Not good. Run. Without too much hesitation. Instinctive intuition made Smoker pull up Tashigi who was on the side and sprinted towards the other side. Same moment, Zhang Jie, who was standing on the bow of the ship with a long knife in his hand, also slowly raised the long knife in his hand at this moment. The top conqueror's hockey wraps around the blade in an instant. In the next second, Zhang Jie's expression turned ferocious. Holding the long knife fiercely, he slashed down at the marine warship in front of him. Clang! The sharp and piercing whistling sound of the long knife exploded, and the dark red crescent light appeared in response. Shoo! At this moment, the sky in the entire sea area seemed to darken. The sea surface, which had some small waves, became calm at this moment. It was as if the flowing time suddenly froze. Clang! There was an ear-piercing buzzing sound, and the dark red crescent blade flashed across the center of the marine warship. Where the sword light passed, the clouds in the sky were divided, and the sea current on the ground was cut off. The entire marine warship was also split in half in a flash of dark red sword light. Boom, boom. There was a violent explosion on the warship, and the sea surface exploded at the same time, stirring up huge waves as high as tens of feet. A huge gully on the sea surface also emerged. Boom boom. But this is not over. The remaining prestige of the dark red sword light set off a strong wave of air visible to the naked eye. Wrapping the sea water stirred up in midair, it swept all directions. Crash! The sea water, like a torrential rain, rushed towards the face with a strong wind. Jaina and the other marines were shocked when they saw this, and quickly raised their hands to resist. But in the next second, they were blown away by the sudden rainstorm and smashed heavily on the wooden wall of the ship. Bang, 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 flop, flop, flop. Ah! For a while, the boat wailed again and again. Obviously, they were all thrown hard this time. This power came fast, and the faster it went. Almost in the blink of an eye, the rainstorm receded. Jaina also gritted her teeth, enduring the pain, and slowly got up from the ground. At this time, her clothes were already wet by the sea water, and her hair was also wet. But when she looked up, she saw the scene directly in front of her. She froze in place because of it. His eyes trembled violently like an earthquake. At this moment, Jaina only had the unbelievable boundless horror in her eyes. I can only see the front. The black smoke gathered in midair had already been dispersed by the residual power wave. That huge marine warship was also split in half at this moment. Although the gully on the sea is rapidly closing, But above the sky, there are still traces of Zhang Jie's knife just now. And from the divided clouds, it is not difficult to see just how terrifying and powerful is the power of Zhang Jie's knife just now. Her body trembled subconsciously, and Jaina subconsciously looked at Zhang Jie's back, her voice trembling with fear. Is that a lie? Is it really a power that humans can master? It's not a level of power at all, is it? It was also at this time that the system's notification sound echoed in Zhang Jie's mind again. Ding! Congratulations to host for getting plus 200 combat value. Hearing how rich the system rewards were, Zhang Jie couldn't help but fell into thinking again. Only 200. Is it less? Does the mechanism determine how many rewards I get, and whether I directly participate in the battle or not has nothing to do with it? Why is that? Thinking of this, Zhang Jie couldn't help but look up at the marine warship that was split in half not far away. Or in other words, what is involved in the judgment of the mechanism is not only the strength of the opponent but also other aspects. On the other side, among the warships. Clicking. The warship that had been split in half was sinking into the sea little by little. The large tilt also made the warship's wooden hull emit an overwhelmed crisp sound. Boom, boom. As a large plank was overturned and fell to the ground, a loud noise echoed along with it. The two figures that were pressed under the wooden plank also emerged. It was Smoker and Tashigi. What happened? Tashigi asked with a trembling body. Smoker glanced around, and his face immediately became serious. Don't know, but what is certain is that this is not a good thing. After saying that, Smoker stood up slowly. He looked at the warship that was split in half, and then at the pirate ship not far away. We underestimated them. The pirates we met this time may be far stronger and more difficult than we imagined. Listening to Smoker's words, Tashigi looked around subconsciously. It was also at this time that she was shocked to find out. The warship was actually split in half. The scene in front of him obviously had a strong visual impact on Tashigi. So much so that her pupils contracted uncontrollably and sharply at this moment. No, isn't it? Am I dreaming? Military warship. Smoker took a deep drag on his cigarette, and Union interrupted Tashigi. This is not a dream. If you continue to lie down, you may be able to dream forever. Tashigi came to his senses and quickly got up from the sloping floor. So, sorry, Colonel Smoker. What should we do now? The warship is tilting and sinking. I'm afraid it won't be long before it will completely sink into the sea. Smoker looked at the pirate ship that was slowly approaching, looked at Zhang Jie standing on the bow of the ship, and said leisurely. I don't know what to do. But one thing is for sure, our fight is not over yet. His eyes swept over the situation of some sailors. Too bad, most of the sailors were lying down at this time, and they didn't know whether they passed out or died. Some of them were not lying down, and they were also staggering, obviously unable to fight any more in a short period of time. If you want to count on them, you can't count on them. After all, the enemy is right in front of you. On the other side, Zhang Jie also noticed Smoker and Tashigi. Look at Smoker's short silver hair, wearing a marine coat, carrying a fork-like weapon, and a big cigarette in his mouth. Zhang Jie couldn't help but narrowed his eyes slightly. This person looks familiar. There are not many middle-aged people with white hair in marine. It was also when Zhang Jie felt that Smoker looked familiar. Jaina at the rear recognized Smoker on the marine warship at a glance. That's Colonel Smoker. He's here. Although both belong to the colonel, compared with Smoker's strength, Jaina is still a lot worse. You know, even if Smoker is just a colonel, he still has a little bit of fame in marine. After all, there are even several nicknames that have been circulated. And all of this reveals that Smoker has great strength. Moreover, he is also a Logia smoke fruit capable user. Thinking of this, Jaina's eyes once again shone with hope. If it's him, then we still have hope. While thinking about it, Jaina clenched her fists nervously. Smoker also greeted Tashigi at this moment. You stay here, I'll deal with them. Hearing this, Tashigi nodded solemnly and took a step back. Smoker, after taking a deep puff of the cigarette, suddenly activated his fruit ability. White smoke, launcher, buzz. Thick white smoke emerged as Smoker's voice fell. The lower body turned into white smoke, and Smoker flew towards Zhang Jie by himself. Call out. Seeing this ability, Zhang Jie was slightly taken aback. Immediately afterwards, he knew the identity of the person in front of him. Smoke Fruit, it's you, Smoker. On one side, Tiandao Pain, who saw Smoker flying straight towards him, looked calm as usual. But the movements in his hands are not sloppy at all. Watching the coming Smoker, Tiandao Pain made a move with his hand, and he condensed a black stick and held it in his palm. Despair, but that day Dao Pain stepped forward, ready to face Smoker. Zhang Jie at the side spoke slowly before him. I'll deal with him, you don't have to interfere. As he spoke, Zhang Jie didn't wait for the crew's reply. Just like that, I faced the coming Smoker. Seeing that Zhang Jie was unmoved by his own attack, Smoker couldn't help frowning. Are you belittling me? With a low snort, Smoker's figure appeared in front of Zhang Jie in an instant. In the next second, the 10 hands carrying the weapon on his back were pulled out tightly by him. Then a blow swung towards Zhang Jie's face. Shoo! Seeing this, Zhang Jie still didn't panic in the slightest, he stood where he was and didn't dodge. Immediately afterwards, Smoker's 10 hands swept across Zhang Jie's head. Call! The whistling sound echoed, but the hitting sound was missing. Feeling the emptiness on the weapon, as if nothing hit it. Smoker's heart tightened. What's going on here? Didn't hit, was dodged, but I was watching. Why didn't I feel the blow? While thinking about it, Smoker suddenly looked up. But what greeted him was Zhang Jie's blow that had been wrapped around Hockey. Boom, boom. Before Smoker could even react, he was hit hard by Zhang Jie's blow that entwined Hockey. And his whole body is like a kite with a broken string. He flew upside down and crashed heavily into the half of the warship he was standing on when he came. Call out. Boom, 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 boom. Loud impacts echoed, and countless sawdust flew across. Billows of smoke rose up. Smoker's body was directly inlaid on the wooden floor. Mr. Smoker, Tashigi yelled worriedly. Opposite. Zhang Jie narrowed his eyes slightly, reminding with a smile on his face. It's not a good habit to be distracted even after running in front of the enemy. On the side, Hungry Wolf couldn't help but patted Obito's shoulder with a smile and said. That guy, is he Lengtaching? With this strength, he dares to go directly to the captain. Obito looked at the Hungry Wolf, and continued the conversation in a flat tone. I don't know if it's Lengtaching, but it's true that his behavior is looking for death. Behind, Jaina was dumbfounded. Her eyes were trembling slightly, and she looked at Zhang Jie with horror. Smoker, lost, a face-to-face, he was blown away. Are you kidding me? Is this a lie? Rao is the rear, those sailors who are not strong in combat. After seeing that Zhang Jie knocked Smoker away so easily, he couldn't help showing horror on his face. So strong, what kind of freaks are these guys? Let's not take the knife in the front. My legs are weak just by standing behind. The strength of this captain is terrifying. Isn't it? The crew members all have that kind of terrifying strength. As the captain, how bad can his strength be? If that's the case, it's dangerous. A group of sailors, looking at the backs of Zhang Jie and others, muttered to themselves with extremely solemn expressions. And the other side, after seeing Smoker's body, beaten to the ground on the wooden floor. Tashigi also quickly pulled Smoker out. Ah! The bursts of severe pain from his body made Smoker exhale in pain. At this moment, he was in a daze. He didn't understand why he didn't hit it, even though he had hit it. At the same distance, I clearly watched the weapon hit the opponent's head, but it seemed to hit the air, and passed through directly. But then, at the same distance, the opponent just raised his arm, and the real attack fell on him. That is why and that's not the main reason for Smoker's bewilderment. The main reason is that I am Logia's smoke fruit ability user. The opponent's attack actually hurt him. That is why Smoker's eyes trembled slightly. The eyes that looked at Zhang Jie were full of unbelievable astonishment. At this time, Tashigi on the side also asked worriedly. How are you feeling, Mr. Smoker? Smoker subconsciously turned his head to the side, enduring the pain and waving his hands. I'm fine, you get out of here quickly, then. However, Smoker hadn't finished speaking yet. A voice with a sense of ridicule suddenly interrupted Smoker's words. Are you really casual? Hearing this strange but familiar voice, Smoker's pupils shrank suddenly. Almost at the same moment, both Smoker and Tashigi looked up at the same time. Immediately afterwards, they saw Zhang Jie. I don't know when it has come to them. Clang buzz. No nonsense from anyone. Zhang Jie held a long knife, raised the knife and cut. A sharp and ear-piercing hum roared. Smoker was startled and quickly pushed Tashigi aside. Boom, shoo, puff. Bright red blood spattered out, and the pain stimulated Smoker's nerves. He couldn't help but let out a muffled snort. However, after being stabbed by Zhang Jie, Smoker did not distance himself from Zhang Jie. Instead, they fought back directly. White vine. Boom. In an instant, Smoker turned into a puff of thick white smoke and swept towards Zhang Jie. Seeing this scene, Zhang Jie brandished a long knife in his hand. I didn't bother to do any fancy things, so I started the God Luo Tian sign directly. Boom. The ground under his feet collapsed. A powerful and terrifying repulsive force suddenly spread from Zhang Jie's body. Buzz. Even though it had already turned into white smoke, Smoker was still directly thrown out. Boom, 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 boom. The body was once again embedded in the wall due to the impact. Billows of smoke and dust engulfed innumerable pieces of sawdust rose up. Cough, cough, cough. In the smoke and dust, Smoker coughed violently, and even coughed up bloody saliva. The impact just now caused severe pain all over his body, and his internal organs seemed to have been hit hard. How is this possible? I have already turned into smoke. Why can he still attack me? Why can he still hurt me? This guy, what's going on? Smoker's eyes trembled, and he was a little confused about the situation. Is he also a fruit ability user? With that said, Smoker raised his head and looked in the direction where Zhang Jie was. Shua! Suddenly, a tearing sound came. The dense smoke surrounding Smoker suddenly tore apart. So much so that his figure was once again exposed in front of Zhang Jie. There is no thought of holding back or softening your heart. As soon as Zhang Jie raised his hand, the universal pull was launched immediately. Buzz, accompanied by a humming sound. A strong gravitational force immediately enveloped Smoker's body. He lifted his whole body and pulled him in the direction of Zhang Jie. Call out, what is this? Feeling the strangeness in his body, Smoker was shocked. It's just that there is not so much time for him to be surprised right now. Because of Zhang Jie's blade with a cold light, already slashed straight at him. Shoo! The blade sliced through the sky, with the sound of howling wind. Not daring to relax in the slightest, Smoker shook hands tightly, and immediately responded with a full blow. Brush! Boom! The two weapons collided. The huge power contained in it immediately produced a huge roar. A terrifying aftermath burst out even more suddenly. Boom! In an instant, the floor under the feet of both sides cracked. Cracks like spider webs immediately spread in all directions. But in the next second, Smoker was still unable to withstand the terrifying force of Zhang Jie's blow, and was hit again with a muffled grunt, before flying backwards. Boom! Boom! Seeing this, Zhang Jie was about to pursue him. But just as he was about to take a step, he suddenly found that his arm and the blade were wrapped in a puff of white smoke. Zhang Jie narrowed his eyes slightly, and Smoker's angry shout came from not far away. I'm not a sandbag, you fool. Hearing this, a smile appeared on the corner of Zhang Jie's mouth, but it was full of playfulness. In the next second, he suddenly bent down. Immediately afterwards, a sharp knife emitting a cold light cut across Zhang Jie's head abruptly. Shua! The person who made the surprise attack was none other than Tashigi. Seeing that his sneak attack failed, Tashigi couldn't help being shocked. Isn't it? This can also be avoided. Are you kidding me? Does he have eyes behind his back? Although I was surprised that Zhang Jie avoided his own attack. But right now, Tashigi has no time to hesitate. This kind of great opportunity for attack is not available every time. Right now this time, Colonel Smoker did not hesitate to suffer serious injuries in exchange for it, and he couldn't miss it. Thinking of this, Tashigi immediately adjusted his state. With a decisive chop, he slashed at Zhang Jie again. Shoo! The whistling sound of the long knife cutting down sounded again. However, Tashigi, not even Smoker, knows that. What they said, and even the sneak attack they knew. For Zhang Jie, who has the top observation hockey, it is equivalent to telling Zhang Jie where they are going to attack while attacking frontally. Just a little play with you guys. Thoughts fluctuated. Zhang Jie immediately let go of the long knife in his hand, and at the same time broke away from Smoker's shackles. Just body rotation. With a powerful blow, Tashigi chopped off from Zhang Jie's face, and fell to the floor again. Boom. Isn't it a lie? Tashigi looked up in astonishment. Smoker was even more frightened, and quickly reminded. Get out of the way. As he said that, Smoker didn't have time to think about it, and directly threw the long knife bound by Bai Yan at Zhang Jie. Shua. He glanced sideways at the long knife flying towards his head. Zhang Jie was calm and composed, just leaned back slightly, and easily dodged. But this also gave Tashigi a little time to react. Clenching the long knife in his hand, Tashigi gritted his teeth and chopped off Zhang Jie's head with a knife. Shoo! When? An untimely crisp sound echoed. The knife that Tashigi swung vigorously was caught by Zhang Jie lightly with 3 fingers, and his body remained motionless. Got it. This. How is it possible? This scene immediately made Tashigi a little overwhelmed. The pupils shrank uncontrollably and there was an unbelievably horrified expression on his face. You guys really like to start, Zhang Jie said calmly. This inexplicable sentence made Tashigi subconsciously chuckle. But the next second, what greeted her was a straight punch from Zhang Jie. Boom. Wrapped around Hockey's fist, hitting the front door, Tashigi felt dizzy, and his mind seemed to go blank. But Zhang Jie didn't stop there. The hand holding the long knife gently pulled. Tashigi's body was thrown forward when he lost his balance. Zhang Jie stepped out and hit Tashigi's abdomen with a blow to the top of his knee. Boom. There was a dull beating sound, Tashigi's pupils bulged slightly, and the pain, like a stabbing knife, instantly conveyed to the nerve center. But before she let out a painful cry, Zhang Jie took advantage of the opportunity to catch the elbow and uppercut. Boom. Bang. 2 dull beating sounds spread, accompanied by the crisp but not loud sound of bone breaking. Catch. Tashigi's ribs and mandible were directly cracked. Immediately afterwards, Zhang Jie hit Tashigi to the ground with another backspin elbow. Followed by a split that sent Tashigi all over the floor, and finally a downward punch that hit her in the head. Boom. 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 Facing Zhang Jie's fast and continuous offensive, Tashigi was powerless to resist at all, and the received attack had already turned her eyes white, hovering on the verge of fainting. It was also at the moment when Tashigi was on the verge of passing out, countless thoughts appeared in her mind. At the same time, it also made her clearly aware of the relationship between the two parties. That comes from the huge gap in strength. I can't see his movements at all. The attack didn't work, and the sneak attack didn't work. I couldn't hit him at all. The gap in strength is too great. This kind of monster is not something I can fight against. I'm sorry, Mr. Smoker. I seem to live up to your expectations. With Tashigi completely in a coma, Zhang Jie took the final sweep kick. Boom. Tashigi's body, like a kite with a broken string, flew upside down and hit the other half of the warship heavily. Call out. Boom. 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 Tashigi. Smoker's worried yell echoed. All this happened so fast that he didn't even have time to react. The whole process only takes a few seconds. Hateful. Without staying where he was, Smoker endured the severe pain from his body and used his fruit ability again. Boom. The lower body turned into white smoke again, and Smoker galloped towards Zhang Jie. Asshole. With a low shout, Smoker clenched his fist and swung towards Zhang Jie. Zhang Jie glanced sideways, and his body reacted quickly. I saw that he immediately fell back on the ground, supporting the floor with both hands, and the whole person stood upside down, his body arched like a shrimp. Smoker's swinging fist missed again because of this. Shua. Seeing his attack being dodged again, he looked down at Zhang Jie who looked calm. Smoker only felt a monstrous sense of aggrieved and powerless rising in his heart. It was also when Smoker's body flew over Zhang Jie. Zhang Jie exerted his strength suddenly, and his hands supporting the floor stretched out. Shua. The next moment, the bowed body suddenly collapsed, and his legs kicked Smoker's chest fiercely. Boom. Accompanied by a dull beating sound spread. Smoker coughed out a mouthful of bloody saliva. Ahem. Immediately afterwards, his whole body flew out like a shooting star. Call out. Boom. 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 With continuous loud noises, the Smoker hit the warship again, billowing smoke and dust. It's different from previous times. This time, Zhang Jie didn't give him any breathing time. Clatter. After the body landed steadily, Zhang Jie followed closely with his legs, and he rushed out steeply. Boom. The huge explosive force even caused the floor to collapse. Whoosh. Zhang Jie's figure instantly broke through the billowing smoke and came in front of Smoker. Without any nonsense, Zhang Jie raised his hand to charge his strength and punched him directly in the face. Boom. Boom. Smoker's body, which was already embedded in the wooden wall, went a little deeper. A cold light flashed in Zhang Jie's eyes, and he opened his hands. In the next moment, his eyes overflowed with light, his whole body changed drastically, and his voice murmured in a low voice. Flowing water, rock breaker fist, sound and fist. Without showing any mercy, Zhang Jie's fist slammed into Smoker's body like a torrential rain. Bang, 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 boom, 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 boom. Every time Zhang Jie punches, Smoker's body sinks deeper into the wall. Under the greeting of Zhang Jie's hundreds of punches, Smoker's whole body was already bloody, and even the walls were smashed through several times. Boom, boom. With Zhang Jie's final punch, the wooden wall collapsed again. Smoker's figure also flew out and fell into the boundless sea. Boom, boom. Zhang Jie did not pursue again. Sea water is fatal to fruit ability users. Of course, it refers to those who swim in the sea. After all, those with fruit abilities are all landlubbers. Staring at the sea, rippled by Smoker's fall, Zhang Jie thought for a moment, then turned and left. Pick up your long knife. Zhang Jie waved it casually for a while, and several sword lights shot out. Shua, Shua, Shua. The marine warship, which had already been split in half, was once again divided by Zhang Jie's sword light. Boom, boom, boom. Warships that are divided into smaller pieces sink faster. Zhang Jie put his sword back into its sheath and returned to his boat. I don't know if his strength can be used as a standard of measurement. If it's not possible, the battle just now will become meaningless, right? While the thoughts in Zhang Jie's mind were fluctuating, the system's notification tone suddenly came again. Ding! Congratulations to host for getting plus 400 combat value. Zhang Jie's pace stopped immediately. Then he turned his head and looked at the wreckage of the warship that had been divided into several pieces and was sinking rapidly behind him. Now, it won't become meaningless. What's the matter, Captain? Seeing Zhang Jie staring at the wreckage of the warship, Yi Ji Yu Yutai asked curiously and puzzled. Hearing the sound, Zhang Jie looked back and shook his head calmly. Nothing. Just when he was shaking his head, Zhang Jie suddenly noticed Jaina and the others behind him from the corner of his eye, and their expressions were a little strange. However, Zhang Jie didn't care. After all, whether their faces are ugly or not has nothing to do with Zhang Jie. The battle just now gave Zhang Jie some guesses about the system's reward mechanism in his mind. Moreover, it is different from previous speculations waiting for actual confirmation. Because what I am experiencing now, more or less can match some aspects of the guess. These 400 combat points are the best proof. If you add the 200 at the beginning, then this battle will be 600. Combined with the previous combat value obtained by destroying Jaina's 2 warships, this time it is much more. At the same time, the first conclusion can be drawn. The amount of reward is still related to whether you participate in the battle or not. Second, the strength of the enemy. Third, the intensity of the battle. Fourth, the length of the battle. The above out of the second. The second and third are a bit consistent, but further confirmation is awaited. Fifth, the visibility of the enemy. Sixth, according to the influence. Seventh, so build prestige. 5, 6, and 7 are unfounded, extended guesses that need to be confirmed and ruled out. But this does not prevent the birth of Zhang Jie's plan. That is to summon the crew and recruit the conquerors. Now the number of crew members is still too small, and recruiting crew members is the main direction. For this, wars and battles are necessary. But at the same time, we must maximize the benefits as much as possible. The distribution of forces in this world will be reshuffled because of their arrival. No force is immune, and neither is the celestial dragons. The location of the Void Throne. It's time for another person to sit down. But before that, Zhang Jie still needs manpower, enough and strong enough manpower. Therefore, Zhang Jie felt more and more that he had to go to this marine base himself. As for whether Jaina and others are happy or sad, it doesn't matter. As long as they can bring themselves to their destination, that's enough. At night, fight on the deck of the pirate group's ship. Colonel Jaina, what should we do now? A sailor asked softly. Jaina couldn't help being silent for a while when she heard the words, and said leisurely. I can only take one step at a time. I couldn't help but recall the scene of Zhang Jie fighting Smoker during the day. Jaina only felt a chill in her body. The strength of the opponent is stronger than what I imagined. No opportunism, and no dirty tricks. That is undeniably powerful. Even Smoker with his Logia smoke fruit ability is no match for him, and he can't even do him a little damage. This kind of terrifying strength is completely different from theirs. Then we can only take them to the base honestly. Another Marine said unwillingly. Jaina glanced at him, her tone still calm. We can't stop them. Although I don't know why they went to the base, what is certain is that they are very fancy about this matter, and they have to go to the point. Now although our actions are limited. However, we must believe in the power of Marine and the power of justice. What they're going to is our base camp, where a large number of troops are assembled in Marine base with super defense. Even if they are very strong, facing the power of an entire base, they can only die. Hearing these words, all the sailors lowered their heads and fell into deep thought. Yes, that's the base. Marine's base. A large number of Marine troops are gathered, and the Marine base with super high defense power. There are only 5 people on the other side. Will the huge Marine base be unstoppable? If even the base can't stop their footsteps, wouldn't they be unstoppable? How is this possible? Thinking of this, everyone settled down for a while, and they stopped talking. The next day, noon. In a certain Marine branch base. Under the inspection of the sailors on duty, a pirate group that was heading towards the base was also discovered. Hey, am I right? That's a pirate ship, coming towards the base. As soon as these words came out, the guard booth was below. A non-commissioned officer wearing a white marine coat came up upon hearing the sound. What happened? The sailor on duty saluted the sergeant and said solemnly. Report. Off the coast of the base, we found a pirate ship sailing towards the base. The sergeant frowned slightly. Are you sure it's a pirate? The sailor on duty nodded. Yes, Captain. There are pirate flags hanging on their mast sails, and there are a few menacing guys standing on the deck. It can't be Marine. The sergeant gave the sailor a blank look. What time is it? How serious is it? The sea soldier smiled and asked a question. Does that require sounding the alarm? The sergeant looked into the distance, saw the skeleton flag fluttering on the mast sail, shook his head slightly and said. No, it's just a pirate ship. If this situation has to sound the alarm and mobilize the entire base to prepare for war, those guys at the base will have gone crazy. Report it, and at the same time order number 1 and number 3 forts to send those pirates who are eager to die to the sea to feed the fish. Hearing the words, Hai Bing immediately responded loudly. Learn. Clicking. Located on the defense line, the huge fort began to rotate, and bursts of heavy sounds echoed. After a while, the fort stopped turning. The muzzle rose slowly, aiming at the pirate ship sailing towards the base. In front of the fort, the sergeant stared at the pirate ship in the distance for a moment, then shouted in a cold voice. Load the shells. The sailors below acted one after another, loading a large amount of ammunition into the shells. Seeing that everything was ready, the sergeant also waved his hand at this time and shouted. Fire! Bang! 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 Both turrets fired at the same time. The muzzle fire burst out, and the roar was deafening. The cannonball also flew towards the pirate group with a whistling sound of breaking the wind. Shish! 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 At the same time, on the ship sailing towards Marine base. Zhang Jie, Yigu Yutai, Tiandao Pain, Obito, and Hungry Wolf stand proudly on the deck. Looking at the shells that hit them in the sky. On Zhang Jie's face, there was a playful smile involuntarily. Then now, let's go to war. Clang. The long knife at his waist was slowly unsheathed. Zhang Jie held a long knife in his hand, and pointed the tip of the knife towards the base of the Marine branch. Destroy them. After finishing speaking, a cold light flashed in Zhang Jie's eyes. Without waiting for the crew to make any moves, he himself took the lead and galloped towards the Marine base. Boom, whoosh. When Tiandao Pain and Obito saw this, they immediately followed up without any hesitation. Whizzing, the three stepped on the sea and galloped away. Behind, the Hungry Wolf hopped anxiously. Hey, you guys are waiting for me. Mr. Hungry Wolf, I will leave the ship to your protection. I will take a step first. Yi Ji Yu Yutai greeted Hungry Wolf. Before the Hungry Wolf could respond, a big hand reached out from the void, grabbed Otoko Yuta, and took him away from the boat. Seeing this scene, the veins on Hungry Wolf's forehead popped out. Huh, why didn't you take me? As he said that, Hungry Wolf looked at the flying cannonball in the sky again. Let me stay behind. Are you kidding me? How can I be absent from this kind of battle? As far as shells of this level are concerned, I will deal with them in minutes. As he spoke, Hungry Wolf leaned down steeply. The veins all over his body burst out, and his strength was gathered and mobilized by him at this moment. In the next second, he leapt fiercely and flew towards the speeding cannonball. Boom, whoosh, relying on his strong physical fitness and Ultimate's physical explosive power. After the Hungry Wolf obstinately destroyed a few shells, changed the trajectory of a few more shells, and while making sure they wouldn't hit the ship, used them as leverage to leap towards the marine base. Boom, boom. On the boat, Jaina and the others watched this sudden scene. Already horrified, his face changed greatly, showing a look of shock. They walked on the surface of the sea. After destroying the shells, there is still time to use other shells as leverage points. What kind of physical explosive power is this? This has surpassed the limit of human beings, right? These guys, what kind of monsters are they? Is this really something humans can do? The pupils of Jaina and the others shrank slightly. His eyes trembled violently like an earthquake. The scene in front of them had an impact on them that was too great. Boom, boom. The huge roar and trembling sound resounded throughout the marine base. What followed was the loud and long siren. Woo! Inside the marine base, in the cafeteria, a large number of sailors enjoying lunch in the canteen, after hearing the long siren. Immediately, he stood up and looked around in astonishment. This is sirens. What happened? Is there an enemy attack? Isn't it? This is marine base. Who would attack such a place? Is it a pirate? Are you crazy? This is marine base. The pirates saw us running too late. Will they come to die? Don't talk about it. Something must have happened when the alarm sounded. Go and have a look. After finishing speaking, a marine non-commissioned officer hurriedly ran out of the cafeteria. After seeing this scene, all the marines around nodded their heads. That's right. That's right. Go out and have a look. Da da da. Boom, boom. All of a sudden, all the marines in the cafeteria ran out of the cafeteria. The resulting movement was like an earthquake. And it's in a dining table in another corner. A tall man with shaggy black curly hair. After hearing this huge roar and loud long siren, he couldn't help but put down the unfinished food in his hand, and turned his head to look at the source of the sound. After watching for a while, with a helpless expression on his face, he picked up the drink beside him and took a few sips. Gulu gulu. The door will be knocked on. Is this really marine base? I'm here to rest. My rare rest time seems to be going to waste. Complaining softly, the tall man slowly stood up. At the same time, he picked up the white marine coat that was placed aside and draped it over his shoulders. Wow, the sleeves of Marine's coat rattled. A group of sailors passing by the man happened to see this scene. At first they didn't feel anything. But when they saw clearly the military rank on the man's white marine coat and the epaulets embroidered with gold silk, all the sailors were immediately taken a breath of fright. Hiss, big Admiral, suddenly met a man with such a high rank. They were so shocked that they couldn't even speak. The next second, they all stopped running and saluted the man with the rank of Admiral. However, their moves have only just been laid out. That Marine Admiral waved his hand indifferently, and said lightly, "It's okay, don't bother so much, go do your business." Saying that, the Marine Admiral strode towards the outside of the cafeteria, towards the source of the voice. But the group of Marines had already froze in place, unable to recover for a long time. I'm not dreaming, am I?" a Marine asked stutteringly. Immediately afterwards, a loud slap sounded. Snapped. What followed was the sound of gasping for air that was painful to hear. Hiss. Does it hurt? Pain. Then it's not a dream. I cannot believe it. Me too. That's Admiral. Admiral of Headquarters. How could I meet him here? From his appearance, this should be Aokiji Admiral, right? I also think that, after all, the descriptions of the other two don't quite match the current one. It's just like what this group of Marines are talking about. This tall man is also Admiral of Headquarters, Aokiji. Marine Base Port. The blazing fire is burning, and all the forts on the defense line have been destroyed. In just a few minutes of confrontation, Marine has already suffered hundreds of deaths and injuries, and all defensive facilities have been destroyed. Boom! The heavy fort fell down with a bang, and at the same time as it made a loud sound, it stirred up bursts of thick smoke and dust. Boom! Shua! The hungry wolf pierced through the smoke and dust with one hand, and waved at will. Shua! The smoke and dust surrounding him was immediately torn open by him, and the vision in front of him became clear. These big guys seemed to be powerful, but in fact, that's all. Looking at the fort that was so bad that it couldn't be broken anymore, Hungry Wolf gave an evaluation. Zhang Jie, Tiandalpain, Obito, and Yijiu Yutai in front of them also turned their heads when they heard the words. These things mainly deal with ships and the weak, and against individual strong people. It doesn't make any difference whether they exist or not. Zhang Jie continued calmly, and then looked at everyone. Let's split up, we will leave after destroying this base. Everyone nodded when they heard the words, and then walked in different directions. And Zhang Jie also embarked on the journey. Walk on the stone-paved road. From the corner of his eye, Zhang Jie suddenly caught a glimpse of a cage of crabs next to the store not far away. These crabs are still alive, but they are imprisoned in this cage like dead, unable to escape. It was this scene that reminded Zhang Jie of something serious. Although it is a marine branch, it is also a base after all. Should there be prisoners and pirates? There should be a navigator I need to find, right? Thinking of this, Zhang Jie felt a little better, and moved forward a little faster. Now except for smashing the marine base, Zhang Jie has another purpose. That is to go to the prison of marine base to see if there is anyone you were looking for. If so, it would save me a lot of trouble. After all, recruiting navigators is neither difficult nor easy. The main reason is that it is difficult to meet. Under normal circumstances, it is necessary for the captain to spend all his efforts to find, recruit, and persuade the navigator to join. In unusual circumstances, it is difficult to say. Just like Zhang Jie, for navigators, he never thought of spending all his efforts to recruit them. Just kidding, does he have the time to chat with a navigator about the future? This is the navigator who didn't meet other pirates or other people along the way. Otherwise, he doesn't even need to go to the prison to take a look now. When you meet another pirate group, just grab it and you're done. The navigator himself is unwilling. What does that matter? The sea is so vast, and there is more than one navigator. There will always be a few people who are afraid of death. After walking on the empty road for less than 10 minutes, Zhang Jie's pace suddenly slowed down, and finally stopped slowly. It stopped less than 10 meters away from an intersection. A sound of footsteps coming from far and near came to Zhang Jie's ears. A moment later, a tall man with a white marine coat on his shoulders appeared at the intersection, before Zhang Jie's eyes. And this person is none other than Admiral of Headquarters, Aokiji. Boom, boom, boom. From time to time, there will be bursts of roars and wailing sounds all around. There are also dazzling and fiery flames soaring into the sky, and thick billowing black smoke rises. But Zhang Jie and Aokiji, who were on the street, looked at each other, as if they didn't hear or see at all. Looking at Zhang Jie, who is not very old, but can stand calmly on this kind of environment and on this kind of street, Aokiji couldn't help but said leisurely, "Are you the intruder?" Slowly raising his hand, Aokiji turned his head and blew into his palm. Crack, 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 bursts of crisp sounds echoed. But in the blink of an eye, Aokiji had an extra skate in his hand. Seeing this scene, Zhang Jie raised his eyes and brows, and then a smile appeared on his face. "Yes, I am the intruder. If I'm not mistaken, you should be Admiral of Headquarters, Aokiji." I heard Zhang Jie say his name. Aokiji scratched his head in confusion. After thinking about it, he looked at Zhang Jie again and asked, "Who are you?" The name of Admiral of Headquarters is not just a name. Still a powerful deterrent. Ordinary pirates heard the prestige of the admiral of headquarters and saw the admiral standing in front of them. Not to mention being scared to the crap. There must be at least some fear and panic. After all, Admiral, known as Marine's strongest combat power, is not just talking. Can be unmoved under the prestige of Admiral. Someone who can remain calm in front of Admiral. Except for those maritime overlords who dominate one side, and the cadres under their banners, there are probably no other people, right? Hearing Aokiji ask about his name, Zhang Jie's face remained smiling, but his hands were unambiguous. Clang, accompanied by a crisp sound of the blade being unsheathed. The long knife hanging from Zhang Jie's waist was slowly unsheathed. And Zhang Jie, while drawing his knife out of its sheath, briefly introduced himself. Captain of the battle pirates, Zhang Jie. Clang buzz. The long knife exuding a sharp breath was completely unsheathed at the same time as Zhang Jie's words fell. I pondered Zhang Jie's words for a while. Aokiji thought about it. Fighting the pirates. Never heard of it. Well, but it doesn't matter. After all, I have to trouble you to go to the prison to spend it. Aokiji stepped forward and strode towards Zhang Jie. As for what Aokiji said earlier, Zhang Jie just smiled lightly. Then we have to see if you have the ability. I think, compared to the probability of me being imprisoned, the probability of you being killed by me is greater. Did not continue the conversation that no longer had any meaning. Aokiji held the skates in his hand, and disappeared into the spot instantly with a dodge. Whoosh! When it appeared again, it was already behind Zhang Jie. And without raising the skate in his hand at all, he slashed at Zhang Jie. Shoo! The ice skates were wrapped in cold air, and bursts of frost and mist roared towards them. Zhang Jie raised his eyes slightly, and the trajectory of Aokiji's ice skates was locked and predicted by his observation hockey. In the next moment, Zhang Jie turned slightly to the side. Aokiji dodges the ice blade that fell down with ease. Boom! The ice blade that stopped before it was too late slammed heavily on the ground. Seeing this, Aokiji couldn't help but startled. Avoided. At such a close distance, and at such a late hour, there is still action. He escaped so easily. The pupils contracted slightly uncontrollably. Aokiji turned his head suddenly, and looked at Zhang Jie, who was at the side in disbelief. There was a faint smile on Zhang Jie's face. At the same time, Haki attached a long knife and slashed towards Aokiji. Clang! There was no longer the previous lazy meaning on the face. Aokiji stared at Zhang Jie with a solemn face, holding the ice blade decisively back in his hand, making a defensive gesture. Boom! There was a deafening buzzing sound, and the two knives collided fiercely. A powerful wave of remaining prestige suddenly set off. Boom! And Aokiji himself took advantage of the opportunity to distance himself from Zhang Jie again. Clatter! The figure landed steadily on the ground, and Aokiji looked at Zhang Jie not far away. It seems, things are not as easy as I thought. Zhang Jie smiled and said nothing. Aokiji also understands that this young guy in front of him is stronger than he previously expected. Just a short moment of fighting. He deeply felt how superb Zhang Jie's control of hockey was. Now it seems that it is simply unrealistic to solve the opponent in one move and a half. Today, it is inevitable to spend some effort. Thinking of this in his heart, the aura around Aokiji also changed abruptly. Wisps of white chill rose from his body. Sensing the change in Aokiji's breath, he saw wisps of cold air emanating from his body. Zhang Jie didn't wait any longer, and walked towards Aokiji slowly. There was no verbal exchange of any kind. The moment the two sides made eye contact, they immediately moved. Whoosh! Holding a long knife, Zhang Jie burst out with strength under his feet, and rushed towards Aokiji with one stride. Aokiji's right hand was icy, and then he waved at Zhang Jie fiercely. Boom! The crisp sound echoed, and a gust of cold air swept towards Zhang Jie wrapped in frost. Wherever he went, a thick layer of ice condensed all around him. Crack, click, click. Zhang Jie frowned, and his running speed did not slow down, but a powerful repulsion erupted from his body. Boom! In an instant, the sweeping cold air, even the frost was scattered away. Faced with this sudden scene, Aokiji couldn't help shrinking his pupils, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Bounced. Not much time to think. The moment Aokiji's thoughts fluctuated, Zhang Jie had already arrived in front of him and slashed at him with a knife. Shoo! Boom! Aokiji held up the skates with both hands to resist. But under the strong force of Zhang Jie's saber, his whole body was so shaken that he flew upside down and crashed into the house beside him. Boom! The wall was hit by Aokiji's body and collapsed, the gravel fell, and a thick cloud of smoke was set off by the remaining power. Taking advantage of the victory, Zhang Jie chased out, and his body was instantly submerged in the thick smoke and dust. Whoosh! In the next second, there was only a huge roar. Another wall in the house exploded. Aokiji's figure flew upside down with countless gravels. Boom! Shish! How did this happen? Aokiji, who was flying upside down, gritted his teeth and muttered to himself in concern, with his hands still crossed in front of his chest, maintaining a defensive posture. Also at the same moment, in the collapsed house, there was another loud noise suddenly. Boom! In the next second, the smoke surrounding the house was immediately shaken away. Zhang Jie chased Aokiji again. Boom! Raising his left hand suddenly, Zhang Jie faced the flying Aokiji with his palm, and launched the universal pull again. Buzz! Accompanied by a hum, Aokiji immediately felt himself being captured by a huge suction force. The speed of the inverted flight is slowing down. Oops! Aokiji murmured inwardly, and then flew towards Zhang Jie. Whoosh! Seeing that the distance between the two sides is getting closer, Aokiji immediately activated his fruit ability with all his strength. Ice wall. His cold hands were raised violently. In the next second, a huge wall of ice suddenly rose from the empty street. Boom! Boom! Crack! The crisp icing sound echoed. An ice wall more than 10 meters high traversed the entire street and stood in the middle of Aokiji and Zhang Jie, separating the two. The suction on his body disappeared, and Aokiji used the ice wall as a force point, and jumped out steeply. Whoosh! Same moment, looking at the ice wall that suddenly rose in front of him. A cold light flashed in Zhang Jie's eyes, and his galloping speed did not slow down at all. Click! Clenching the long knife in his hand, Haki attached to it in an instant. Give me, open! With a low snort, Zhang Jie's eyes brightened. Immediately afterwards, he took a big step steeply and slashed towards the huge ice wall in front of him. Clang! The ear-piercing long knife whizzed through the air. A dark red crescent knife shadow came out in response, across the ice wall. Shoo! In an instant, the huge ice wall, together with the surrounding buildings, was cut in half on the spot. The upper part, even under the power of Zhang Jie's saber glow, soared 3 meters into the air. Rumble! In midair, Aokiji, who had just retreated and vacated, saw the whole building in front of him, which was cut in half by Zhang Jie's knife, and he couldn't hold back anymore. The pupils are shrinking sharply, and the eyes are trembling violently like an earthquake. At this moment, he had an expression of disbelief on his face. And that sense of boundless terror. No way! Not only was my ice wall cut open by him, even the surrounding buildings were also implicated, and were cut into 2 halves. What kind of monster-like power is this? It was also at the moment when Aokiji's thoughts fell. All the vacated buildings crashed to the ground, that huge ice wall. But because of the huge power of Zhang Jie's knife, he was blown apart on the spot, turning into countless ice cubes and splashing out in all directions. Boom! 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 Shish! The dense dust is like a sandstorm in the desert, swept across the entire surrounding area. Hum! Meanwhile, the other side, where Obito is. Boom! Boom! Listening not far away, there were bursts of roaring and loud noises. Obito's eyes under the mask could not help but narrow slightly, and smiled lightly. This movement is really loud. It was also when Obito's voice fell. A burst of dense footsteps suddenly came from one side. Da 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 da. Obito turned his head and saw a large group of Marines with weapons galloping towards him. Seeing this, Obito could not help but smile and adjust his direction, facing the group of Marines rushing towards him. Then, let me mess around a bit too. The distance between the two sides is rapidly shortening, and soon, the distance between Obito and Marines, it has come to less than 20 meters. All the Marines also clenched their long knives tightly at this moment, preparing to have a life and death contest with the guy in the white mask in front of them. But Obito, at this moment, slowly raised his hand, formed a mudra with one hand, and whispered in a deep voice. Summoning technique. Ghetto statue. In an instant, the space behind Obito twisted, and at the same time produced ripples like rippling water. The next second, before Marine could react, a huge giant hand suddenly protruded out of the distorted space. Shoo! A huge black shadow enveloped the Marines. At this moment, Marine under the shadows fell into despair. Is that a lie? What is this thing? No. Don't. No. Before the Marines' self-talk spread, the huge palm slapped them horizontally. Boom. With one slap, the dozen or so Marines who were running at the front of the team were slapped away on the spot, blood spattered out, and there was continuous pain and wailing. Puff. Ah. Before the Marines behind could react. Then another big hand protruded from the twisted void behind Obito, and a dozen Marines were sent flying with a slap. Boom. Puff. Ah. The same fate as the first batch of Marines who were photographed flying. The two consecutive downsizing also made all the Marines react. Marine, who had a higher military rank, even reminded loudly. Stop. Stop it, don't go any further. The Marines all stopped. Ghetto statue, who was summoned by Obito, also showed his huge body at this moment. Boom. Then came the lower body of Ghetto statue. Boom. The huge body of Ghetto statue took a step forward. Even the ground paved with stone slabs collapsed in an instant, cracking terrifying cracks like spider webs. Boom. Boom. Immediately afterwards, the huge Ghetto statue was seen. Under the watchful eyes of the Marines below, he completely stretched his body and roared to the sky. Roar. The deafening roar resounded throughout the Marine base and even the entire island. The terrifying sound was clearly visible to the naked eye. Even the clouds floating above the sky were directly dispersed by Ghetto statue's roar. It was as if a hole had been pierced through the sky. Below, witness the gigantic form of the Ghetto statue. All the Marines froze in place, motionless. Dangling, dangling, dangling. The continuous sound of falling weapons echoed. Some of the Marines who reacted fell apart in an instant. Despair enveloped their bodies and minds, causing them to fall into madness. Some laughed, some cried bitterly. Hey, he, ha ha ha. This kind of thing, facing this kind of thing, how could we possibly win it? This must be a joke from the heavens. This kind of thing, how should I live in the face of this kind of thing? Monster. At this moment, the Marines no longer have the will to fight in their hearts. They understand and are well aware of the gap in strength. Facing this kind of behemoth, facing this kind of monster, they have no chance of winning at all, only a dead end. However, Ghetto statue will not stop just because they have no fighting spirit and are in despair. No mercy. Ghetto statue raised his right leg and stepped towards the Marines below. Boom, boom, boom. On the other side, Aokiji, who was in midair, also witnessed the appearance of Ghetto statue. Witnessing him sticking out his giant hand, then his body, and then his lower limbs. Then his body suddenly rose tens of feet, as if he wanted to break through the sky. The eyes trembled uncontrollably. Aokiji stared closely at the huge Ghetto statue, couldn't hide the horror on his face and said in a voice. This is, the Titan family. When did he come here? However, that was the brief moment where Aokiji was distracted. Two sharp whistling sounds suddenly sounded. Clang. In the next moment, two dark red blade lights abruptly broke through the dusty mist below and galloped towards Aokiji. Faced with this sudden scene, Aokiji couldn't help being startled, thinking that something was wrong. Oops, it's just that surprises are surprises. But Aokiji will not be stupid and do nothing, he has rich practical experience and strong strength. The moment he saw the dark red blade light, his body reacted immediately. The power of the fruit motivates. The icy frost covered Aokiji's whole body, and the elementalization unfolded. Boom, Aokiji's elementalization has only just begun. The two dark red sword lights had already hit Aokiji. Aokiji's body also shattered into countless ice cubes and fell downward. Call out. Boom. The ice cubes fell to the ground, and the icy cold air swept across, freezing the surrounding area in an instant. Crack, crack. Soon a humanoid ice sculpture slowly rose. Aokiji's figure once again appeared on the street intact. Without the slightest hesitation, Aokiji raised his hand and used his ability again. Crack, crack. Three harpoon-like ice spears condensed on Aokiji's side amid bursts of crisp sounds. Two thorny spears. There was a low shout. With a big wave of Aokiji's hand, 3 ice spears shot out suddenly. Shish, shish, shish. Also at the same moment, Zhang Jie's figure rushed out of the dust and mist. Whoosh, looking at the 3 ice spears flying towards him. Zhang Jie clenched his long knife and swung it continuously. Dang, dang, dang. Accompanied by 3 crisp sounds, the 3 ice spears were instantly sent flying by Zhang Jie, changing their original flight trajectories. The speed of Zhang Jie's attack also slowed down for a short period of time, and then returned to the original level again, galloping towards Aokiji. Whoosh, Aokiji frowned. At this moment, he also understood that the effect of keeping the distance was not great. You have to find an opportunity to injure or control the opponent from the front. Knowing this, Aokiji no longer retreats. Instead, he just stood there and stimulated the ability of the fruit. Kacha kacha. Terrifying cold air overflowed, and Aokiji's body turned into ice with bursts of crisp sounds. Zhang Jie also appeared in front of him at the same moment. Buzz. The long knife exuded a terrifying and sharp aura, and Zhang Jie swung the knife in all directions without hesitation. Aokiji also raised his ice-sculpted hand at the same moment, and reached out to grab Zhang Jie. Ice time, ice time. Facing Aokiji's sudden move, Zhang Jie narrowed his eyes slightly. That hand exuding a terrifying cold air made him feel a little threatened. Aware of this feeling, Zhang Jie unfolded Kamui immediately without the slightest hesitation. Kamui. Buzz. Also at the same time, the right arm that Aokiji grabbed with his probing hand directly crossed Zhang Jie's body. The same goes for Zhang Jie's long knife that slashed at his head. Also at this moment, I passed through his body that turned into an ice sculpture, and crossed over. Shoo. Aokiji, who witnessed all this with his own eyes, was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out at this moment. Is that a lie? My hand directly passed through his body. Air. Afterimage. His eyes trembled violently like an earthquake. Aokiji's face was full of unbelievable horror. It was just the moment when Aokiji's thoughts rose, the attacks of the two passed by each other, and there was no longer any physical contact between the two sides. The Kamui cast by Zhang Jie also ends here. But he didn't fall into a brief stagnation like Aokiji. Instead, he raised his leg without any hesitation, and kicked Aokiji's abdomen with a whip kick. Boom. Cough. Aokiji, who was not prepared, was whipped by Zhang Jie abruptly. The huge force even made him cough up a little saliva. It was also after a firm blow to the abdomen that Aokiji woke up instantly. How can this be? It's not an afterimage, and it's not air. He literally hit me. Why, just now my attack clearly passed through his body, but in the blink of an eye he was able to hit me. Is it fruit power? How did this weird guy? How did he do it? With endless doubts, like a meteor, Aokiji flew upside down and crashed into a house in the distance. Call out. Boom, 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 boom. In an instant, there was continuous roaring sound and thick dust billowing. But this time, Zhang Jie did not pursue the victory. Instead, he directly stored his big move on the spot. Boom, powerful power surged out in an instant. Zhang Jie's leaking power even condensed into a burst of dark red aura, surrounding Zhang Jie's whole body. Boom, also at the same moment, on the street. The floor made of stone bricks. Also at this time, because he couldn't bear the powerful force erupted by Zhang Jie. And suddenly collapsed layer by layer. Boom, boom. Staring at the direction of Aokiji, locked on Aokiji's breath. Zhang Jie slightly raised the long knife in his hand. Top of the line Conqueror's hockey wraps around in an instant. Boom. The dark red aura visible to the naked eye is like several red streaks, wrapping around the body of the long knife at this moment. Shish. Around the blade, even around Zhang Jie. There are dark red arcs jumping, and there is a creepy barking sound. The other side, Aokiji, who was kicked by Zhang Jie and crashed into the wall of the house, just got up from the pile of stones. Right in front of him, he felt the terrifying aura that seemed to be going straight to the sky. And that powerful coercion that makes even Admiral feel palpitations, move in fear. This kind of coercion, this kind of oppressive feeling. Conquerors. Aokiji stared at the direction where Zhang Jie was, and couldn't help crying out in shock. At this moment, his pupils couldn't help shrinking sharply. There was also an unprecedented look of horror on his face. This breath, this coercion, this sense of oppression. How could he not know what it was? Only one person in a million owns a Conqueror's hockey. If it was Conqueror's hockey alone, Aokiji wouldn't be so gaff. But the question is, how old is the other party? You know, Conqueror's hockey cannot grow through practice. Such a powerful Conqueror's hockey has been mastered at such a young age. This has to be what a horrible monster. Also during the ups and downs of Aokiji's thoughts, Zhang Jie's momentum has also been fully prepared. Don't talk too much nonsense. Holding a long knife in his hand, Zhang Jie took a big step forward. Boom. It seemed to be extremely heavy, but it was only the moment when Zhang Jie's steps fell. The hard stone road collapsed again. Boom, boom. And at the same time, cracks spread in all directions, and the slate layer either collapsed or vibrated. A strong sense of crisis welled up in my heart. It was also at this moment that Aokiji felt that long-lost fear. Obvious, clear, visceral fear. This guy really wants to kill himself. Moreover, it's not a small grasp. Knowing this, Aokiji's eyes trembled. The terrifying cold air suddenly poured out under his full power. Ha! Crack, crack, crack. There were crisp sounds. Where the snow-white cold air passes, everything is frozen, and everything condenses into ice. And Zhang Jie gritted his teeth at this moment, and swung the long knife that had already been charged. Boom! The moment the long knife was swung, a dark red aura suddenly gushed out like a beam of light. And this also made the long knife seem to weigh 1,000 catties. Difficult to be swung down by Zhang Jie. Go and meet God. The veins on his arm bulged. Zhang Jie gritted his teeth, and slashed the long knife in his hand while drinking in a low voice. Clang buzz. The ear-piercing whistling sound resounded throughout the marine base. A dark red halo seemed to cover the entire world. Accompanied by it, a huge sword glow flashed by. Shoo! Boom! But wherever the sword glow passed, even if the sword glow didn't really touch the surrounding buildings, the building will also be destroyed in an instant under the terrifying aftermath of the sword glow. Boom boom boom. Aokiji, who was facing the blade directly, did not dare to be careless in the slightest. At this moment, his whole body was covered with a layer of snow-white frost. Fruit's ability was pushed to the limit by him. Lifting his frenzied and cold hands suddenly, Aokiji yelled with all his might. Ice Age! Shoo! White icicles rose from the ground, facing the dark red sword light that came from the slash. In almost an instant, the two clashed fiercely together. What followed was that huge roaring sound. Boom! 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 The terrifying residual power turned into a wave of air visible to the naked eye, sweeping all directions. Wherever the body went, all buildings were destroyed and collapsed by it in an instant. Boom! This moment, even the entire island where the marine base was located was violently turbulent. And the next second, the dark red sword light split the island, and at the same time split the sea. Even the clouds above the sky were not spared. Until the end of the line of sight, a huge mushroom wave rose. The dark red blade glow completely disappeared. The sky and the earth, which had been illuminated red, were restored to their original appearance. Boom! Located in the underground prison at Marine Base. The criminals being held here are already in a mess at this moment. They frantically knocked on the wall, frantically shook the prison's iron bars, and yelled heart-piercingly. Bang bang bang! Let us out! Let us out! You bloody Marines, you just run for your life. Open the door for us, fools. Is this the earth getting angry? I can feel that the ground is shaking violently. What the hell happened outside? With such a big commotion, is it the end of the world? The voices of the criminals who shouted loudly became hoarse at the moment. But no one responded to them at all. What responded to them was only the clearly observable turbulent ground, the roaring noise from the upper floor of the prison, and some Shuchen soil that was shaken down by the loud noise. Boom, boom. Suddenly, the turmoil became more intense. Even rocks fell from the ceiling and hit the ground. Boom, boom. Suffered more than 10 minutes of mental torture. Some criminals could no longer suppress the fear in their hearts, and shed 2 lines of tears. How can it be repaired? Are we going to be buried in this prison? Marine, even if I'm a ghost, I won't let you go. I don't want to die yet, wow. And some more criminals. Then he knelt down directly facing the wall, crying, and began to pray devoutly. Great God, please save your devout believer and let him escape this disaster. Great God, although I have only started to believe in you today, I think I will be more devout than those who have always believed in you. Please help me. God, please save me. I am willing to be your most loyal believer, and I am willing to repent for all the evils I have done. Me too, God, please help me. I am also willing to repent for the evil I have done. Just let me repent in this world. Please don't take me directly to you to repent. Amen. Great God, this fellow is blaspheming you, and I will execute him. The criminals spent an uneasy and difficult half an hour in the dark prison. Not long after, the ground stopped trembling, and the movement above gradually disappeared. Stop, stop, it's over. We're still alive. I'm still alive. Very good. Really, really good. For a moment, the criminals all let out a long sigh of relief, and their tense nerves relaxed. Plop, plop. Many criminals sat on the ground paralyzed on the spot. Some even showed the joy of surviving after the catastrophe, with tears streaming from the corners of their eyes. After quietly slowing down for a few minutes, everyone finally recovered. The fear in my heart has almost dissipated. Instead, there is curiosity and doubt in human nature. What the hell happened up there? It's a strange feeling. It's too abnormal. The earthquake is over. With Marine's style, he should check the situation of the prison as soon as possible, right? With this question was initiated. All the criminals were lost in thought. Yeah, there's something wrong with this. Although they may have gone to escape, they will never really ignore us. Now that the earthquake has stopped, they should come back anyway. Otherwise, if we are allowed to escape, they will not feel better than facing the earthquake. A group of criminals chatted and discussed. At the same time, directly above them, in Marine's base, the originally huge base has become dilapidated at this moment, and now there are only less than 1.5 floors left of the towering floors. Part of the first floor doesn't even have a ceiling. Zhang Jie and the others stood on top of the ruins formed by the collapsed base, staring at the ground below. With their keen perception, the people in the prison below have already been noticed by them. The reason they didn't go down immediately was because they hadn't found the entrance to the underground prison for a while. Now, it seems that there is some trouble. The collapse of the building has formed such a large ruin. The entrance to the underground prison may have been buried. It is not easy to find it. Yi Ji Yu Yutai said a little distressed. Hungry Wolf also looked around when he heard this. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth. Such a large ruin, looking for a small entrance, when will we find it? Since there is no one on the ground, let's open one for him. While speaking, the Hungry Wolf moved his arms and slowly walked over the perceived crowd in the dungeon. And the other side, Zhang Jie didn't care about the crew's actions at all. Because he has given this matter to them. And it was explained that at least one navigator and one chef should be caught. Otherwise, they would still have to float in the sea and eat unpalatable meals in the days to come. Now all he cares about, all he has to do is to check and use the spoils. Host, Zhang Jie. Battle value 9,700. Item, none. Conqueror, Bone Yuta, Uchiha Obito, Hungry Wolf, Pain Tiandao. Lottery entrance close double angle bracket. Looking at the 9,700 combat value on his panel, Zhang Jie felt that he had made a lot of money after this trip. Just one battle, the battle value obtained is almost 10,000, and there will be a few more battles like this. That feeling is simply not too comfortable. A total of 9,700 battle points, how many times will it take to draw all the prizes? Which world conquerors will be summoned this time? Thinking in his heart, Zhang Jie couldn't help showing a smile on his face. There was nothing to hesitate. Zhang Jie immediately entered the lottery page and drew a prize. Conquest value minus 1,600. Ding. Congratulations to host for summoning the conqueror from Demon Slayer World, Jigyu Yueni. Ding. Congratulations to the conqueror, Jigyu Yueni, for winning the battle blessing, the top armament hockey, and the top observation hockey. Ding. Jigyu Iwan 1-inch conqueror's ability was successfully extracted. Ding. Congratulations to host for gaining the ability Transparent World. Ding. Congratulations to host for obtaining the sword skill Breath of the Sun. It was also at the moment when the system voice fell. Zhang Jie immediately noticed the changes in his body. His understanding of swordsmanship also seemed to have risen a big level at this moment. In addition to its own changes, and the superb swordsmanship, Zhang Jie also noticed another thing, a big one. That was drawn by a lottery. It seems that something is not quite right. After just drawing a prize once, Zhang Jie only has 8,100 battle points left. However, on the lottery page, the conquest points required for a single draw have doubled. Came to 3,200 points once. This growth momentum is not good. At first, I thought that with more than 9,000 battle points, I could draw several times. Counting now, it's only twice at most. By the third time, the battle value is not enough. Chapter 31. This is really a terrible discovery. According to the growth rate of the system, it will become very difficult to recruit a conqueror in the future. Thinking of this in his heart, Zhang Jie's mood is not much better. Even in this battle, the combat value obtained, and that little appointment. All were deluded a lot by this discovery. However, it is not enough to make people unhappy. Although it has now risen to 3,200 points. But if there is a lottery, there is still a lottery. Conquest value 3,200. Ding. Congratulations to host for summoning the conqueror from Shinigami World, Ulquiorra Cipher. As the system's voice fell, the moment that name echoed in Zhang Jie's mind. Zhang Jie was taken aback. Did I hear you right? Doubtful thoughts just surfaced in my mind. The system's prompt sound came to Zhang Jie's ears again. Ding. Ulquiorra Cipher. Conqueror ability extraction completed. Ding. Congratulations to host for obtaining the ability, high-speed regeneration. Ding. Congratulations to host for gaining the ability to probe nerves. Ding. Congratulations to host for gaining the ability, shared vision. Ding. Congratulations to host for gaining the ability, steel skin. Ding. Congratulations to host for acquiring the skill, release space. Ding. Congratulations to host for acquiring the skill, Sero. Ding. Congratulations to host for acquiring the skill, false bullet. Ding. Congratulations to the host for acquiring the skill, speeding. Ding. Congratulations to host for getting an extra reward, power. With the system's voice down, Zhang Jie immediately felt a huge force gushing out from his limbs. Buzz. In an instant, the power leaked out. The rocks and slabs under Zhang Jie's feet turned into foundation powder in an instant. Boom. A dark red aura visible to the naked eye rose from Zhang Jie's body. Ahead, Hungry Wolf and the others who were about to make a hole in the ground felt the aura emanating from Zhang Jie. They were all startled, and turned their heads to look at Zhang Jie. The captain's breath is stronger. Is this my illusion? Hungry Wolf looked shocked. Yigu Yuta standing not far from Hungry Wolf. At this moment, my heart was also greatly shocked, and my eyes trembled uncontrollably like an earthquake. This is not an illusion, Mr. Hungry Wolf. The captain's current power is so rich that it can be clearly seen by the naked eye. Whispering, the space behind Yigu Yutai distorted, revealing a black shadow. In the next second, Lixiang's figure slowly appeared. Where I am, can clearly feel the horror of this force. When Yigu Yutai heard this, a smile appeared on his face. Then he leaned against Lixiang lightly and comforted him softly. Don't be afraid, Lixiang. This is a good thing, he is our captain. On the other side, Obito didn't say anything though. But there was already a storm in my heart. As this, fear. The pupils contracted slightly uncontrollably. At this moment, Obito felt a great sense of oppression on Zhang Jie. On the contrary, Tiandao Pain, who was closest to Zhang Jie, didn't respond at all. The expression on his face was still the same cold one. Just stood quietly, silent. And Zhang Jie, after feeling the changes in his own body, suppressed the leaking power. Looking up at Hungry Wolf and the others, Zhang Jie said with a smile on his face. Don't worry about it, just keep doing what you do. With a simple explanation, Zhang Jie took care of his own business again. Originally, he was also depressed about the system increasing the battle value of the lottery. But now, this depression has been swept away. The strength and value of these two fighters are definitely worth the money. The current overall strength is even better than facing the Emperor-level pirates, right? Zhang Jie thought so in his heart. Suddenly, a sudden change occurred. Not far from Zhang Jie, the void suddenly shattered. Dang clang. The broken object like a mirror fell to the ground, but it didn't make any sound. At the same time, with the shattering of the void, an irregular, nearly 3-meter high, nearly 2-meter wide black passage emerged. What followed was the sound of crisp footsteps coming from the mouth of the clump of black passages. Da, 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 da. Soon, a silver-white long knife hung from his waist. He had short black hair, pale complexion, and emerald green eyes. The tall man with 2 green tear stains under his eyes slowly walked out from the black passageway. And he is also the Shinigami world conqueror summoned by Zhang-Jie, the 4th blade in the espada of the Empty Night Palace. Ulquiorra Cipher. After Ulquiorra Cipher comes out of the passageway. Another man with a long knife hanging from his waist, a high ponytail, black and rosy hair, dark red eyes, sunflower paper earrings on his earlobes, and a dark red flame Madara pattern on his left forehead, also quietly then walked out of the passage. And he is also the conqueror summoned by Zhang-Jie. From the roof of Ghost Slayer World, the strongest swordsman who masters the top sword technique, Breath of the Sun, and was born with the flame Madara pattern of penetrating the world. Follow Guo Yueni. The black passageway slowly closed as Yueni and Cipher walked out. The two also turned their heads to look at Zhang-Jie the next second after they walked out of the passage, and bowed their heads respectfully. Captain. Hearing this, Zhang-Jie nodded with a smile. On the other side, Yi Guyutai looked at Cipher and Yuan together. It's the new crew. The Hungry Wolf on the side nodded. These two guys are very strong. They have this level of oppression in their restrained breaths, they are incredible guys. Obito at the side couldn't help but joked with a smile when he heard the words. If you face one of them, how likely are you to win? Hungry Wolf smiled. If you want to say how sure you are of winning, it's really hard to say. I'm not even sure of being undefeated. Of course, I have to fight to know how it will be. As he spoke, Hungry Wolf gave Obito a meaningful sideways glance. After all, there are not many simple members called by the captain. If you were to face them, how sure are you that you will win? Hearing Hungry Wolf's rhetorical question, Obito smiled slightly. You're right, none of the captain's members are simple, and I'm not sure. Of course, unbeaten is also included. Hungry Wolf. The top priority is to get through the prison entrance. After finishing speaking, the Hungry Wolf walked to the top of the underground prison. Then he clenched his fist and raised his hand, and punched the ground with a powerful punch. Boom, boom. The loud noise echoed, and the hard ground collapsed several meters down. Boom. Bursts of roaring sound echoed, and thick smoke and dust were lifted up by Yu Wei. However, even if the Hungry Wolf punched the ground a few meters deep, it still couldn't directly connect the underground prison with the ground. However, it was within Hungry Wolf's expectation that he failed to punch through this point. Because in perception, even if it is a straight line distance, the location of the underground prison is still very deep. Boom. Another loud noise echoed. The Hungry Wolf began to punch the ground again and again. The goal is to penetrate through the prison and the ground. At the same time, in the underground prison. Bang, bang, bang. Listening to the movement that was louder than the sound, I felt the earth trembling more and more every time. The prisoners who were held in the prison panicked again. What is this? It seems that something is coming down towards us. What happened up there? Seemingly sensing the crisis, the criminals leaned back subconsciously. It was also at this time that an extremely loud roar spread. Boom. The ceiling of the underground prison collapsed. Large and small gravel and dust, like a sandstorm, swept the password to the entire prison. There were bursts of violent coughing in the huge prison. Cough, cough, cough. Cough, cough, cough. Also at the same moment, a slightly surprised voice spread. Oh, it works. It works. Hey, come down too. With the sound of the Hungry Wolf came out. Obito Yuta and Obito, who were above, also jumped down. Da. Landing steadily beside the Hungry Wolf, Yiji Yutai raised his hand and waved it. A big cloud of dust. Hungry Wolf grinned. That's how rough methods are, bear with it. It's the business to settle what the captain told us. Saying that, Hungry Wolf walked out. There are still a lot of people. Obito scanned the situation in the underground prison and whispered to himself. At this time, the criminals in the prison. Look at the ceiling with a big hole pierced through it, and the sunlight shining in from above. He looked at the 3 blurred figures outside the prison and in the corridor, all dumbfounded. Them. However, before they could react, the voice of the Hungry Wolf spread throughout the prison. Are there navigators among you? Hungry Wolf's question fell. The navigators who were detained in the prison were taken aback for a moment. The female navigator who was the first to react immediately stood up and ran to the iron bars of the prison, and responded loudly. I am a navigator, I am a navigator. It was her shouting that made all the navigators react. Here's to getting out hope. In the next second, they spoke one after another. I am also a navigator. However, Hungry Wolf didn't even look at them, and said with a smile. It seems that our luck is good, there are really navigators here. Obito smiled and walked towards the navigator who spoke first. And there are quite a few. It would be even better if we can find them all at once. In that prison, the first navigator to speak. Seeing Obito walking in front of him, he couldn't help asking. You. However, she hadn't finished speaking yet. Obito directly reached out his hand through the gap in the iron bars, grabbed her by the collar, and pulled her out. Buzz. Seeing that he suddenly passed through the iron fence and came outside. The navigator was completely dumbfounded. I came out. Turning his head in disbelief, the navigator looked at the iron bars of the prison, full of horror in his heart. You came out like this. I didn't even realize what was going on, and suddenly went outside. How did he do that? These guys, who are they? The navigator looked up at Obito wearing a white mask, his pupils trembling slightly. And those criminals who were held in the prison, after seeing Obito pull the navigator out of the cell, they were completely overwhelmed. This is Hope out. Almost at the same time, the people in the prison were all crowded on the iron bars of the prison. He begged loudly to Obito, Hungry Wolf and others. Save us. Let us out. Brother, please, open the door of the cell and let us out. For a while, there were pleadings in the prison one after another. The navigator who was just pulled out by Obito was stunned in place. Obito on the side ignored it. Yi Guyu was too silent. The Hungry Wolf picked his ears impatiently and said, Give me some peace. The Hungry Wolf's voice was not loud, but it seemed to have magical power at the moment, making the noisy prison quiet in an instant. All the criminals knew very well that the people outside the prison had the final say on whether they could go out or not. Obedience is one of the prerequisites for going out. No one jokes about his freedom unless he doesn't want to go out. Seeing everyone quiet down, Hungry Wolf spoke again. I don't have the key to open the cell door, and I'm too lazy to do the extra work. We only take away those we need. Listen honestly. After hearing these words, the criminals understood the seriousness of the matter. Only take the people they need, which means places are limited, maybe even very few. Knowing this, the criminals couldn't help but look at each other. His eyes were full of guard. The other side. Zhang Jie is still summarizing the harvest this time and feeling the power of his own growth. Host. Zhang Jie. Battle value 4,900. Item none. Conqueror. Obito Yuta, Uchiha Obito, Hungry Wolf, Pain Tiandao. Jigyu Ueni, Ulquiorra Cipher. Lottery entrance close double angle bracket close double angle bracket. Today's lottery draw requires a battle value that has risen to 6,400 once. Fortunately, there are still 4,900 points left, so it is not too difficult to get together for the next lottery draw. Withdrawing his attention from the system panel, Zhang Jie's eyes fell on reality. Cipher, Ueni, and Tiandao Pain. At this time, they were standing beside Zhang Jie, waiting for the return of the three hungry wolves. The three hungry wolves did not delay too long. After a while, the three of them jumped up from the hole leading to the prison with 6 criminals in their hands. Boom, plop. As soon as they reached the ground, the three hungry wolves threw the criminal in their hands to the ground. The sudden jump, coupled with the sudden fall. The 6 criminals, who hadn't realized what was going on, were thrown on the spot, grinning and crying out in pain. Ah, hiss, it hurts, it hurts. Looking at the number of people brought up by the hungry wolf, Zhang Jie couldn't help but wondered. 6. Hungry Wolf grinned and explained. 1 navigator, and the other 5 are cooks, sailors, and helmsmen, but they know a little bit. I think there are a few more people, and it will be easier to distribute. Hearing this explanation, Zhang Jie nodded and didn't say anything more on this topic. If someone brings it up, let's go. After that, Zhang Jie turned around and walked towards the port. Hungry Wolf and others followed closely behind. The 6 criminals were left alone in a daze, not knowing whether to keep up or what to do. It wasn't until the Hungry Wolf's displeased cries came that the 6 criminals came back to their senses. "What are you still doing there? Hurry up and follow." Seeing the arrogance of Hungry Wolf and others, dissatisfaction suddenly rose in the hearts of the 6 criminals. Tisk, these arrogant guys don't even say hello, don't even ask their names, how rude. That is this their attitude towards future partners? HMPH. With their attitude, whoever wants to be their partner can do it. I don't care about it anyway. TCH, don't even look where this is. Do you think we are locked in that prison? A middle-aged man with a thin figure and wicked eyebrows said disdainfully. And what he said successfully attracted the attention of the surrounding companions. Before they could speak, the middle-aged man with wicked eyebrows continued to speak. "Let me follow and I will follow. Who do they think they are? Now that I'm outside, it's what I say. Follow whoever wants to. I don't want to serve you. Please." After finishing speaking, the middle-aged man with mischievous eyebrows waved his hands and shook his head under the astonished gazes of his companions, then turned and left. But it was the moment he turned around. A man with a long silver knife hanging from his waist, wearing a white windbreaker, with emerald green eyes and a green tear stain under each eye appeared in front of him in an instant. Indifference looked down at him. And this person is Ulquiorra Cypher. Looking at Cypher's sudden appearance, the man with sly eyebrows and mouse eyes couldn't help being taken aback. In the next moment, a flattering smile appeared on the face of the man with sly eyebrows and mouse eyes. It's just that the man with sly eyebrows and mouse eyes hadn't waited for something to explain. Cypher stabbed out with a hand knife. Shua, puff. Bright red blood spurted out. A big hole was pierced by Cypher's hand knife on the lower part of the neck of the man with the evil eyebrows and mouse eyes. Cough. Big mouthfuls of bright red blood were coughed up by the man with the wicked eyebrows and mouse eyes. He looked at Cypher, his pupils trembling violently like an earthquake. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't, and after a while, he was completely silent. And Cypher's expression didn't change at all from the beginning to the end. Only that indifference overlooks. On the sidelines, the 5 people who witnessed the murder of the sly-eyed man by Cypher were not well. We can even say, their souls were almost scared out of Cypher. This guy, didn't he follow those people just now? Why did it suddenly appear here? Die, die, die. Has he heard it all? Are you going to be killed? What did I just say? Without exception, the 5 criminals all curled up their necks. Head down, trembling, facing Cypher right in front of them. They didn't dare to look up, and they didn't even dare to breathe. He even held his breath directly. At this moment, there is only boundless fear left in their hearts. It is as if the fear of death is at hand. After a while, a criminal came to his senses and said in a panic, "Follow up, keep up, I'll keep up now." After that, he slowly stood up. I didn't dare to get up too fast, for fear that a misunderstanding by Cypher would kill him. When he got up safely, he quickly chased after Zhang Jie and the others. The other 4 also stood up one after another and followed. As for Cypher, he watched quietly the whole time without saying any more nonsense. Soon, he also took steps to follow. He could feel Cypher's footsteps behind him. The 5 people in the middle only felt like a thorn in their backs and a thorn in their throats. What did that guy say? People are standing behind him, and he dares to say it so presumptuously. One person complained angrily in a low voice. Another man heard the words and echoed, "That's right, it almost got us involved." The man with a beard on one side also clenched his fists at this time and said, "But that guy in white clothes is too much. He even killed people without making a sound. I'm just a weapon that I don't have at hand. Otherwise, this matter will definitely not be left alone." Hearing the conversation of the companions, the navigator also spoke after pondering for a while. "They should have heard what we said. The reason why they didn't treat us should be that we still have value to use." The man who spoke first looked sideways at the navigator and said nervously, "So we're in danger now." Hearing this, the navigator nodded solemnly. However, just when she was about to speak, an inappropriate, trembling voice suddenly reached their ears. "Hey, hey, hey. Compared to that, you should raise your heads and look around." As soon as these words came out, the other four were also stunned for a moment. Subconsciously raised his head and looked around. Seeing this, the four of them gasped on the spot, and the hairs all over their bodies stood on end. Such a long time in the dark underground prison. He was rescued from the prison, and met the young captain on the ground, followed by the dead. All of this happened so suddenly. So much so that they all forgot, where is this prison located? Also at this moment, they suddenly realized that something was wrong with the surrounding environment. Where is this place? Isn't it a lie? Here, isn't Marine Base. How did it become like this? What happened here? Marine Base, gone. The pupils of the four people trembled, looking at the surrounding environment, their faces were full of unbelievable horror. At this time, the surroundings are full of broken bricks and tiles, ruined walls, and ruined wells. What an awe-inspiring scene of ruins. You can't see a complete building at all, even the huge Marine Base looks like this. You know, before they were imprisoned in an underground prison. But I have seen the scene here. Although this place is not prosperous, it is still lively, and there are many private houses and other houses. But right now, everything turned into ruins. Are you kidding? Here, what happened? Why is there no one left? Why are the houses collapsed? Is it caused by the huge movement just now? Is it an earthquake? What kind of earthquake is it that can destroy this island like this? The more people looked around, the more frightened they became. Not a single Marine was seen, not a single resident was seen. It's as if all evaporated. You know, they were in prison, and they saw Marine not long ago. Now, no one is missing. It was difficult to suppress the fear in their hearts, and everyone's faces turned pale. The navigator on the side subconsciously turned his attention to Zhang Jie and others in front. Could it be they did all of this? Thoughts arose in his mind, and the navigator couldn't help but feel terrified. But soon, she threw away this thought, and whispered to herself with a forced smile. Hee, how is it possible? It is impossible for them to do it. There are only 7 of them in total. The Marine Base is so big and heavily guarded. With their numbers, they can't even fight in, let alone destroy it like this. Here, it should be caused by an earthquake. They just happened to pass by and take advantage of a loophole. It's really scary. I came to a conclusion in my heart. The navigator couldn't help sighing in his heart, the power of this earthquake is really terrifying. As for these houses, they were destroyed by the group in front of them. She didn't believe it at all. Just these 7 people, not to mention Marine guarding them. Just relying on the 7 of them, give them 3 heads and 6 arms, plus 1 person with 9 hammers. Let them knock on these houses and buildings alone, and they can't knock them like this. The funny picture of Zhang Jie and others with 3 heads and 6 arms, holding 9 hammers and knocking on the wall instinctively emerged in my mind. The navigator couldn't help grinning. Cross a ruin piled up into a hill. Everyone's eyes suddenly opened up. A huge Haihei river leading directly to the center of the town came into view. The navigator couldn't help being stunned for a moment, and murmured with a look of astonishment on his face. Here, when did there come an extra Haihei river? She remembers it clearly. When she was caught and taken to the underground prison, she had never seen the Haihei River on this island. This Haihei River is more than 10 meters wide, and its depth is not known for the time being. It can be more than 100 meters long, and it leads directly to the boundless sea. It is also at the same time as seeing this Haihei River. The navigator finally saw a figure. However, it was the figure of a dead man. As far as the eye can see, there are corpses all over the place, some of which look like Marines, and some that look like civilians. This sudden scene caused the navigator's pupils to shrink sharply, his delicate body trembled, and he took a step back subconsciously. The body trembled violently like sifting chaff, and the navigator's face was full of horror. Pointing at the corpses all over the place, he spoke in a trembling voice. Dead, dead, all dead. The 4 people beside the navigator heard the trembling voice of the navigator. She also subconsciously looked in the direction she was looking at. When they saw the 100-meter-long Haihei River and the corpses everywhere, their pupils suddenly shrank uncontrollably. Are you kidding? Marine, civilians, are all dead. The blood is still flowing. Are these people who died not long ago? What happened here? The casualties are so serious. Just now. Was it really an earthquake? Thinking of this, a middle-aged man couldn't help swallowing hard. Curiosity and incomprehension enveloped his body and mind. So much so that after mustering up his courage, he spoke to Cypher behind him. "Hey, what happened here just now? Why are these people dead?" As soon as these words came out, the rest of the people around the middle-aged man also turned their heads to look at Cypher. But Cypher turned a deaf ear to this, and said calmly and indifferently, "Go faster." The middle-aged man who asked this question was stunned when he heard this. What I originally wanted to say was also abruptly suppressed by Cypher's indifferent attitude. Subconsciously glanced at the saber on Cypher's waist. The middle-aged man resisted the impulse, and after cursing secretly in his heart, he took a step to catch up with Zhang Jie and the others. What an arrogant guy. No one else dared to find Cypher unhappy. Also followed up. What they didn't know, however, was that Cypher had turned a deaf ear to their inquiries. One reason is because of his calm and cold personality. Secondly, in his eyes, these weak guys were also so arrogant and conceited that it was unpleasant. If they were not the people the captain needed, Cypher would have slaughtered them all before they opened their mouths to slander the captain. Walking on the way back to the ship, the navigator and others were observing the surrounding environment all the way. But the more they looked carefully, the more frightened they became. A series of questions came to their minds, but they had no way of knowing the answers. Subconsciously looked up at the backs of Zhang Jie and others. After staring at it for a long time, the navigator shook his head with a self-deprecating face and smiled secretly. Hee, what the hell am I thinking about? What can the 7 of them do? Soon after, everyone returned to the boat. Zhang Jie evoked the 5 people who had just boarded the boat and let them sail. There was a buzzing sound. The sails that were put down were immediately inflated by the sea wind. As a result, the ship moved slowly and left the port of Marine Base, conquering the pirate group, and embarked on the journey again. The navigator looked curiously at the environment on board. Looking at the sail, the skull logo unique to pirates. Look at the sickle and skull pattern that belongs to the pirates. The war pirate flag hanging on the top of the mast sail. If there is no accident, she will be a member of this pirate group in the future. It was also at this time that Zhang Jie, Obito, Cypher and others suddenly noticed something strange. In the next second, they all lowered their heads in unison and looked below the deck. They stared straight at one place, their eyes seemed to penetrate the deck, and saw the breath below the deck. Under the mask, Obito frowned slightly. Intruder. Yigu Yuta. Although the breath is weak, it should be correct. 2 intruders have boarded the ship. Hearing this, Hungry Wolf immediately showed a playful smile. Interesting. It even came to our boat. Captain, what should we do with them? Zhang Jie raised his head upon hearing the sound, and withdrew his gaze from staring below the deck. Let's take it and have a look first, and leave it alive. Hungry Wolf jokingly responded, and strode out. Learn. Yigu Yuta also stepped out of the road at this time. I'll go with you, Mr. Hungry Wolf. On the side, 5 navigators who just appeared on the stage. Listening to the conversation of Zhang Jie and others, it was a fog. A few people stared wide-eyed. You looked at me, I looked at you, completely unaware of what Zhang Jie and others were talking about. Did I hear wrong? Intruder, aren't we the only ones here? Where did they come from? Are they hallucinating, or are they hallucinating? The 5 raised their eyebrows and looked around, their faces full of doubts and incomprehension. In the cabin, Yigu Yutai and Hungry Wolf walked together on the corridor, heading for the cabin warehouse. Those 2 breaths are hiding in the warehouse. Boom. The Hungry Wolf kicked open the door of the warehouse and strode in. Without any unnecessary looking around, Hungry Wolf and Yigu Yutai looked directly at the intruder's hiding place. Come out, you 2 little mice. After the Hungry Wolf shouted, there was no movement in the warehouse full of wooden boxes. This also made Hungry Wolf couldn't help but sneer. Can't you come out? Then I will help you. After all, the Hungry Wolf moved its tibia and walked towards the intruder's hiding place. Crack, click, the crisp sound of tibia activity spread throughout every corner of the warehouse at this moment. I don't know if I was frightened by the words of the Hungry Wolf. I was still startled by the sound of the Hungry Wolf moving its tibia. Before the Hungry Wolf took a few steps, a petite figure pushed open the lid of the wooden box and stood up, speaking in a trembling voice with a crying voice. Wait, wait, I come out by myself. Facing this sudden scene, looking at the petite figure, Hungry Wolf and Yijiu Yutai, who were about to pull them out just now, were all taken aback, and said with a look of astonishment. Child, another place, above the sea. Crack, click, click. The crisp sound spread from time to time. On the boundless sea, a piece of floating ice suddenly appeared. The area of the ice floes is small, with a diameter of about 5 meters, which is still irregular. On the ice floe, there was a tall and embarrassed figure. His clothes were torn and stained, and there were many dark red bloodlines. Leaning against a low wall of ice, he sat on the ice floe. His pale face was in stark contrast to the bright red flowing down from his forehead. And he is also the admiral of headquarters, Aokiji, who fought with Zhang Jie before. Adjusting his breath, Aokiji slowed down for a long time before he regained his energy. At this time, the irregular ice floe, which was originally only 5 meters in diameter, had spread to 7 or 8 meters. Floes spread slowly. If there were no crisp and clear sounds, it would be difficult for the naked eye to catch them. This is really a big joke on me. Looking at the injuries on his body, Aokiji seemed to be enjoying himself while suffering. But in his heart, he was full of unwillingness. As one of Marine's top fighters, one of Admiral's headquarters. Not to mention failing to protect the people and failing to protect the base. Even himself was almost beaten to death in a small place by an unknown pirate. This is a great shame. Holding his breath, Aokiji stood up with some difficulty. Looking into the distance, he took a step and walked back in the direction of Marine Base. Even at this time, he is above the sea. There was nothing around except the ice floes under his feet, and he still took steps and moved forward. Just when his steps were about to fall towards the flowing sea, a terrible chill overflowed. The flowing sea level freezes in an instant. Crack, crack, and Aokiji walked back towards the base step by step. I don't know how long it took before Aokiji finally returned to Marine Base. Looking at the island that has turned into ruins, Aokiji had a complicated look on his face. The emotion of self-blame was constantly amplified in his heart. So much so that he stood where he was, looking at the ruins for a long, long time. Even if there are surviving Marines and civilians to ask about his situation, he just stood there without saying a word. Also at this moment, the ruins have already become a mark in Aokiji's heart. It can never be erased, and will always be alert to his mark. We'll meet again. Next time, it won't happen again. A sea area, where the battle pirates are, on the deck of the ship. Whether it's a member of the Conquest Pirates, a rescued criminal, or an intruder. They are all gathered here at this moment. Strangely, there was no voice on deck. Only the sound of the boat riding the wind and breaking the waves surrounds my ears. Zhang Jie watched indifferently, and the 2 intruders kneeling in front of him were silent. Speaking up, these 2 intruders were actually 2 young girls. The older ones don't look more than 11 or 12 years old. The younger one looks like 7 or 8 years old. They were dirty, their clothes were torn, and they smelled sour. From this appearance, one could tell that they were 2 vagrants. Look at the slightly older girl. Pointing to the skull on the sail, Zhang Jie asked calmly. Do you know what that pattern symbolizes? The girl looked sideways, then looked at Zhang Jie and nodded firmly. I know, you are pirates. Looking at the girl's appearance and hearing her tone, Zhang Jie couldn't help narrowing his eyes slightly. Immediately afterwards, he was seen smiling and nodding his head, looking at Heavenly Dao Pain beside him. Throw it into the sea and feed the fish. Tian Dao Pain immediately stepped forward. But the 2 little girls shivered from fright. Wait a minute. Let us join you. The older girl hurriedly said. The younger one was already trembling with fright, unable to speak. I don't need any burden on my boat. Zhang Jie refused with a flat tone, with the same expression as usual. Tian Dao Pain also came to the 2 girls and picked them up. This time, the girl was crying anxiously. She hurriedly turned her head to look at Zhang Jie, her voice was crying and trembling. We won't be a burden. We can do chores and eat less, just 1 bowl of rice a day. So, please, don't feed us to the fish. I have strength and I can do chores. Please, woo woo woo. Although he picked up the 2 girls, Tiandao Pain was not in a hurry to make the next move. Those purple eyes looked at Zhang Jie calmly, waiting for Zhang Jie further instructions after listening to the girl. It was also at this moment that the navigator who was rescued from the prison couldn't stand it anymore. She wanted to come forward and save the two girls. But right now she can't keep the situation, but it makes her a little afraid to be the early bird. On one side are the two girls who are in danger, and on the other side is myself who may be in danger. This made the navigator hesitate in a dilemma. It was also at this moment of her hesitation. Zhang Jie spoke again. Looking at the two little girls, his tone was still so calm and he smiled lightly. I haven't fallen to the point where I need a brat to do things for me. The next time the ship docks, let the two of them disembark. Hear Zhang Jie's words. Tiandao Pain also took a look at the two girls, and let them go. Plop. The two girls fell heavily on the deck. It hurts a bit. But they were still in shock, but after hearing Zhang Jie's words, they couldn't react to the pain for a while. And Zhang Jie didn't explain too much, and just walked back to the cabin like that. On the way, he also inexplicably had an idea. It's against the law to employ child labor. When he reacted, I felt a little funny and shook my head. Looking at the two girls who were temporarily out of danger, the navigator couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. It's okay, it's okay. But when she thought about Zhang Jie saying earlier that he would throw the two girls into the sea to feed the fish, she suddenly became a little depressed again. Even at the end Zhang Jie changed his mind. But the navigator still gritted his teeth angrily, staring at Zhang Jie's back and cursed secretly in his heart. Evil guy. In another sea area, Aokiji is riding a bicycle on the sea. Crack, click, click. On the surface of the sea, the crisp sound of freezing echoed. It's just that Aokiji's unrestrained and carefree behavior is somewhat incompatible with his embarrassed appearance. At this time, he was still wearing the same tattered clothes. There are also many wounds and bloodline on the body. Even the front wheel of his bicycle is made of ice. All these scenes revealed his embarrassment. Clang. The screech of brakes suddenly sounded. Aokiji stopped the bicycle, and the range of ice flow below spread immediately. Crack, click. Lifting his head slowly, Aokiji looked southeast. A warship with the marine flag flying high and a huge dog's head on its prow also came into his sight. After looking at the spot for a while, Aokiji started to ride the bicycle again. Only this time, he turned around and rode towards the dog-headed warship. Over time, soon, the sailors on duty on the Kotu warship also saw Aokiji's whereabouts from a distance. With a light snort, the sailor on duty looked puzzled. Is someone riding a bicycle at sea? It must be because I didn't sleep well last night and my eyes were dazzled. Whispering to himself, Hai Bing rubbed his eyes. After a while, I picked up the binoculars again to check. This time, he not only confirmed that someone was riding a bicycle on the sea, and saw the face of the cyclist clearly, and see the bloodline and injuries on the cyclist. Hiss. The sea soldier gasped, and unconsciously took a step back. That is, Aokiji Admiral, he got hurt. At this moment, his face was full of unbelievable horror. This is one of the 3 admirals in the headquarters, known as Marine's top combat power. Injured. No, this must be my misreading. He really couldn't imagine that in this kind of place, who could hurt a Marine admiral with the ability of Logia fruit like this. With some difficulty, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The sailor on duty didn't dare to delay, so he turned around and ran to report. Located in a room on the 2nd floor of the warship, an old man wearing a dog hat, holding a donut in his hand, and still chewing in his mouth, couldn't help squinting his eyes slightly after hearing the duty report. Yu said in a deep voice. Kuzan, he's here too, injured. The sea soldier who reported hesitated for a while, and added. Looks like it's hurt. Hearing this, the old man wearing a dog's head hat slowly walked out the door. I see. While talking, the old man wearing a dog hat. He also threw the last donut in his hand into his mouth. Go forward in the corridor leading to the deck. But when they met this old man wearing a dog's head hat, there was no one who would not salute him respectfully. Master Vice Admiral, Vice Admiral Garp, Vice Admiral Garp. Facing the greetings from the subordinate officials, Garp also nodded with a smile. Walked out of the ship building, went down the deck, and came to the side of the ship. Garp also saw Aokiji, who was driving towards this side on a bicycle. After careful observation, Garp found out that Aokiji was really injured, and judging from his face, it seemed that it was not serious. Garp couldn't help frowning at this scene. Not long after this, Aokiji rode a bicycle to the dog-headed warship. Before he could say hello first, on the deck of the warship, Garp's deep voice came. "Kuzan." Aokiji looked up and saw Garp's frown and gloomy expression. "Mr. Garp." Garp's head lifted slightly, overlooking Aokiji below. Garp's tone was still low and muddy. "What's the matter with your injury?" However, Garp's serious look didn't last long. In the next second, he broke the power directly, and laughed out loud. "What happened? You must have been cleaned up by someone, right?" "Ha ha ha ha." Hearing this, Aokiji also showed a little helpless expression. After getting off the bicycle, Aokiji stood on the ice floe and pondered for a moment. "Well, a lot of things happened. In short, I was beaten up by someone." Garp folded his arms, a smile on his lips. "Who did it? Red Hair, or other cadres?" "Kaido, Whitebeard, Big Mo is unlikely to appear in this kind of place." Aokiji didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up his bicycle, jumped into the middle of the warship. After that, he leisurely replied, "Neither. It's an unknown little pirate named Zhang Jie." Hearing Aokiji's answer like this, Garp was visibly taken aback. "Are you joking with the old man? A majestic admiral, let an unknown little pirate make this look?" And knocked off the wheels of the bicycle. Obviously, Garp doesn't believe Aokiji's explanation. Is Admiral a joke? Perhaps the strongest one may not be Admiral, but Admiral's strength is undoubtedly top-notch. Therefore, the three admirals in the headquarters will be known as Marine's top combat power. But now Aokiji actually said, he let a little pirate with no ranking be beaten into this appearance. This is even more unconvincing than the red hair appearing here and injuring him. Being teased by Garp, Aokiji couldn't help but look at his bicycle. The wheels condensed by ice. With a bit of embarrassment on his face, Aokiji thought for a while and explained. "Well, it was an accident, the wheel was thrown crooked by a stone." Simply explain the wheel thing. Aokiji's face also became serious. "However, what I just said is true, it's not a joke. Although that guy is a little pirate, he looks very young, he looks about 20 years old. But his strength is very strong. The time I played against him was not too long, but it was also a short while. I just discovered his mastery of hockey use. And he still has it. Only one person in a million will have the Conqueror's hockey. And the degree of control over it is equally astonishingly exquisite." Seeing Aokiji say these words with such a serious expression, Garp's complexion finally changed. The smile subsided unconsciously. Garp repeated for confirmation. "Even Conquerors can be used superbly. How far is his Conquerors?" Aokiji thought for a moment, then spoke solemnly. "He's really masterful with hockey, I've experienced that firsthand. As for how Conquerors he is, I don't know. If you have to say it, except red hair. I haven't felt a similar degree of oppression from anyone's body, that kind of breath oppression that makes people feel as if they are about to be suffocated." As soon as Aokiji said these words, even Garp, who has seen the big world, also set off turbulent waves in his heart at this moment. Other than the red hair, who has not felt a similar degree of breath oppression. What does this mean? Kuzan is one of the three admirals at naval headquarters. How many strong men have you seen? It is the four emperors who are now ruling the hegemony, known as the emperors of the sea, among them. Among them, which one would have the Conqueror's hockey without this overlord? Even some of their crew, the cadres, have Conqueror's hockey. The red-haired Conqueror's hockey is recognized as the strongest. But even so, Aokiji said anyway, except for the red-haired Conquerors, he hasn't felt the oppression of someone's Conquerors, which is similar to that called Zhang Jie. Doesn't that mean, on Conqueror's hockey, he's the first man under red hair? Even on par with redheads? Thinking of this possibility, Garp's pupils contracted sharply uncontrollably. The expression of unbelievable horror is fully displayed on the surface at this moment. At the age of 20, the level of Conquerors is comparable to that guy with red hair. Conquerors are not the kind of people who can become stronger through training. Is this a genius, or a monster? Even Aokiji was hurt like this by him. The pupils trembled unconsciously. Garp still couldn't believe it. But he also understood that Aokiji would not joke with him about this kind of thing. Just when the horror in Garp's heart was not out of date, Aokiji spoke again. Mr. Garp, if you meet that guy one day, be careful. Garp was slightly taken aback, and looked up subconsciously. Immediately afterwards, he grinned and said, "Brat, do you think this old man is old and useless, and can't even deal with a brat?" As he spoke, Garp raised his sandbag-sized fist. However, Aokiji shook his head with a calm face. "No, Mr. Garp. I just want to tell you that the guy named Zhang Jie who claims to be the captain of the battle pirates is very dangerous and needs to be on guard." While talking, Aokiji scratched his cheek in embarrassment again. Although he looks young, he is very strong. After all, this time, I almost died in his hands. Hear this. Garp's pupils shrank suddenly, and his pupils trembled violently like an earthquake. Even you almost died in his hands. Are you joking with the old man? At this moment, Garp showed an unprecedented look of horror on his face. Aokiji's words and this news were like a blockbuster, stirring up waves in Garp's heart. One of the 3 admirals in this part. Marine's top combat power. He almost died in this paradise, almost died in the hands of an unknown little pirate. What the hell are you kidding? This is not funny. This time Aokiji didn't answer, but looked at Garp seriously. And Garp also took Aokiji's advice seriously in his heart. Also at this time, a man with bandages all over his body, like a mummy, with a big cigarette dangling from his mouth. A woman with a saber hanging from her waist slowly appeared on the deck. As the pattern of the flag and sail of their ship, a skull with 2 scythes on it, came the man's somewhat hoarse voice. The sudden words made Aokiji look up. It also made Garp turn around and look over. Looking at the man whose body was covered in bandages and who couldn't make out his face, Aokiji was obviously taken aback. Then he turned his head to look at Garp beside him, and asked with a puzzled expression, "Mr. Garp, who is this?" Garp picks his nostrils. "Oh, him. It's a kid named Smoker." Smoker, whose whole body was bandaged like a mummy, couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth when he heard Garp introduce himself like this. Even Tashigi, who followed Smoker. At this moment, he also smiled a little awkwardly. Aokiji nodded. "That's it." Garp flicked the thing he picked out casually, and said lightly, "When he got on the boat, he was just like you. He was also cleaned up by others. It seems that he was also cleaned up by an unknown little pirate. It's just that Aokiji doesn't care about these." Turning his back to Garp and waving his hands, Aokiji greeted Garp in a calm tone. "Really? Then I'll go and treat the injury first. The doctor should be in the cabin, right?" Hearing this, Garp reprimanded Aokiji angrily. "This old man is not a rescue station, you fools." Aokiji turned and walked towards the cabin of the warship. "Is there no other way? I met Mr. Garp and your warship along the way." Garp froze for a moment, thinking thoughtfully. "Really? That's really impossible." On the side, Smoker looked helpless. "Well, can you ignore what I said earlier?" Garp looked away, blinking. "Did you just say something?" When the words came to his lips, Smoker was at a loss for words, and suddenly didn't know what to say. After a moment of silence, he had no choice but to sigh helplessly, and spoke again. Hutchie. However, before he could say anything, there was a sudden snoring sound in front of him. Looking up, Garp was already blowing snot, and fell asleep standing up. Smoker looked stunned. Tashigi in the rear is also a little ashamed. Asleep. Vice Admiral Garp. Even Smoker, at the moment, is also a little angry. Vice Admiral Garp. But it was also at this moment that Aokiji's voice suddenly came over. "Oh, I remembered. I don't know what his flag sail pattern looks like. I didn't see their ships at the time." After speaking, Aokiji waved his hand. And Smoker only reacted at this time. "The person I want to ask is never Garp, but Admiral Aokiji of the headquarters." Thinking of this, Smoker couldn't help complaining to himself in his heart. "Am I letting him make a fool of me? I can't tell the difference between this kind of thing." Time flies. In a blink of an eye, it was already night. In a certain sea area, on the ship of the pirate group. Is this how these guys treat their companions? Unacceptable. Are they using us like livestock? These guys don't treat us as human beings at all. The 4 chefs, sailors and helmsmen cursed with angry faces. At this time, they were all so angry that the veins on their foreheads were bulging. Navigator on the side of the room. Hearing everyone's cursing, he slowly opened his eyes and looked at the 4 people. It's all up to now, don't you still know the difference? As soon as the navigator said this, the guys who were already full of anger raised their heads immediately, and said in a deep voice with a hint of anger. What are you talking about? Distinguish what? Distinguish that the young captain has taken a fancy to you, so he doesn't order you. The 2 middle-aged men directly insulted the navigator. The other 2 slightly younger men didn't speak. But the face is also full of dissatisfaction and dissatisfaction. They had a bad day. In other words, the 4 of them had a bad time. Because everything on the ship was taken care of by them. Cleaning, tidying up the room, organizing the warehouse, counting materials, stacking and sorting, etc. There are light and heavy. They resisted, protested. But the only response to them was violence. They were forced to do a day's work, and tomorrow, they will face the same situation again. Only the 4 of them tidy up this huge ship. When will it be tidied up? How many days will it take to sort it out? But the navigators who boarded the ship with them were treated very differently from them. Apart from planning the route, but paying attention to the sky and the sea, there is basically nothing to do. Who can change it? Who can stand this anger? However, although he was insulted, the navigator was not angry. She calmly watched the complaining 4 people, and spoke in a calm tone. Be sober. What companion? Can't you see it? From the very beginning, they never thought of us as their companions. Didn't you find out? Whether it was when we were in prison, when we were just rescued, or now, they never asked for our names. From this point, it is not difficult to see that they have never thought of us as companions. Navigator's words of analysis and explanation. The pupils of all the people present couldn't help constricting for a while. Soon, someone stood up and refuted the navigator's words. If it's really like what you said, they never regarded us as companions, then why did they take so much trouble to rescue us? The navigator gave him a cold look and said mercilessly. Are you really stupid or fake? Why do we come out with so much trouble? Because they lack navigators, cooks, sailors, and us handymen. The words of the navigator left the person who spoke immediately speechless. The navigator also continued to speak. They never took our own needs seriously. What they pay attention to is only how valuable this matter is to them. So, no matter how hard and tired you are, any request you make with them will be ignored. We are captives, prisoners. In their eyes, we are just tools. Handymen, that's all. Find out the situation in front of you. After all, the navigator stopped talking and slowly closed his eyes to rest his mind. And the 4 handymen also became silent at this moment. After a long while, suddenly a person showed a fierce look, slapped the table viciously and said angrily. Boom, back to them. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of the people around them all turned to the middle-aged man who spoke. Hey. Are you serious? A man said with some astonishment. The middle-aged man turned his head, with an unabated expression of anger on his face. Otherwise, do you think I'm joking? Another middle-aged man heard this. Finally, he no longer suppressed the dissatisfaction and anger in his heart, and agreed. I agree with your decision. Those guys treat us like livestock. I can't bear it, and I can't bear it. As they spoke, the 2 middle-aged men looked up at the navigator not far away at the same time. The navigator only glanced at them both. He said lightly. Don't look at me, don't count me, I don't need to take this risk. Similarly, I will pretend that I didn't hear what you said today. After speaking, the navigator left the room without looking back. Seeing this, the 2 middle-aged men only narrowed their eyes slightly, but did not do anything else. After a while, the 2 of them turned to look at the other 2 men. What about the 2 of you? Do you want to work for them like an animal, or join us? Hearing what the 2 middle-aged men said, they hesitated a little. After hesitating for a while, a man raised his concerns. However, we don't have an advantage in numbers, and we don't even have weapons. The middle-aged man's face turned cold when he heard this. What about the number of people? The whole ship's food needs to pass through our hands. We just need to poison the food directly, as many of them will die. The man asked again suspiciously. But where did we get the poison? The middle-aged man's expression changed, and he said angrily. You. Before he finished speaking, another middle-aged man interrupted him by raising his hand. There is no rush for this matter. Observe for a day or two first, find out their bottom line, and then make plans. Seeing that the words have reached this point, the people around stopped arguing and became quiet. After all, what he said did make sense. However, what none of the four handymen knew was, the topic of discussion between them is in the eyes of Zhang Jie and others. It is tantamount to plotting loudly in their presence. In Zhang Jie's room, do you need me to deal with them? Cypher stood by the door, looked at Zhang Jie and asked indifferently. Zhang Jie shook his head with a smile. Don't bother, just pretend you didn't hear it. Cypher was a little puzzled when he heard this. But the expression on his face didn't change at all, even his tone was still so cold. Why? Zhang Jie smiled and looked at Cypher. I actually don't care what they think, and I don't care what they say about me behind my back. None of these are harmless to me. I just look at what they do and what I want them to do. It's just planning some impossible things behind the scenes. There is no need to kill them immediately. At least not now, when they can't help but really take action that day, or there are no more people on board. It won't be too late to deal with a few of them to make an example of others. While speaking, the smile on Zhang Jie's face gradually faded. It returned to its original calm appearance. I never cared if they were loyal to me or not. I just need them to fear me. Fear me, so that you dare not disobey me. This is enough. It doesn't matter to me what they think. After listening to Zhang Jie's words, Cypher nodded slightly. Without saying anything, he turned around and left Zhang Jie's room. And Zhang Jie then lay down on the bed and entered the dreamland. Boom, boom, boom. Next morning, there was a knock on Zhang Jie's door early in the morning. Zhang Jie, who was on the bed, also slowly opened his eyes amidst the knock on the door. Looking sideways at the door, Zhang Jie frowned slightly. Immediately afterwards, he stood up and walked towards the door. Squeak, echoed with a piercing sound. The wooden door of the room was slowly opened by Zhang Jie. A short figure also came into Zhang Jie's eyes. And she was also one of yesterday's intruders. The little girl who was about 7 or 8 years old. What are you doing here? Zhang Jie's tone was calm, and no emotional fluctuations could be heard. The visiting little girl looked at Zhang Jie. Some lowered their heads in fear, their voice trembling with fear. I'm sorry. Did I interrupt your rest? What's the matter? Zhang Jie asked again. Listen to Zhang Jie's indifferent inquiry. The little girl immediately picked up the water basin that was almost bigger than half of her body, and gritted her teeth with some difficulty. I called you water for washing. He looked at the water basin in the little girl's hand, and then at her face that was gradually flushing from suffocation. Zhang Jie was silent for a moment, took the basin with one hand and put it aside. The little girl let out a long breath of relief, with a slight smile on her face. Just about to say something. But Zhang Jie asked her again one step ahead of her. Who asked you to bring me the washing water? Suddenly being asked by Zhang Jie, the little girl couldn't help showing a trace of panic on her face. Unconsciously lowering her head, the little girl grabbed the corner of her clothes nervously, and said in a faltering way. Yes, I want to deliver it myself. Looking at the appearance of the little girl, Zhang Jie lost the idea of continuing to ask. Immediately afterwards, he waved his hand casually and dismissed. The water has been delivered, so let's go. Seeing that it was time to go, the little girl's joy showed on her face. Thank you, thank you. Then I'll go first. The task my sister entrusted to me has been successfully completed. The little girl was happy in her heart, and walked briskly, Haven't gone far yet, she couldn't help herself, and jumped up and down happily. And Zhang Jie just stared at it for a moment. He went back to the room and slowly closed the door. Click. After washing, Zhang Jie's eyes fell on the sea outside the round window on the other side. Looking at the seagulls flying in the blue sky, looking at the calm blue sea. Zhang Jie's thoughts drifted to other places involuntarily. Will the arrest warrant come out today? Cypher and Yueni will probably be left behind, right? On the other side, the little girl just jumped out of the cabin and came to the deck. I met the navigator who was about to go to the second floor of the ship head-on. At the first sight of the navigator, the little girl seemed frightened. The smile on his face turned into astonishment and fear in an instant. Immediately afterwards, the little girl lowered her head and obediently stepped aside. Faced with this sudden scene, the navigator couldn't help being slightly taken aback. Immediately after seeing a smile on her face, she beckoned to the little girl with a smile. "Come over." The little girl raised her head. Although she was a little scared, after hesitating for a while, she obediently walked towards the navigator. "What's your name?" the navigator asked gently. "Mona," the little girl responded in a low voice. "What are you doing down there?" the navigator asked again. Meng Na also answered honestly. Go and deliver water for the captain's washing." Hearing this, the navigator couldn't help looking at the door leading to the cabin below. "Is that so? Then tell me, what is the captain's expression when he sees you delivering water to him?" "It seems a little unhappy." Meng Na thought for a while. The navigator nodded thoughtfully, and didn't ask any more questions. Soon, she let Mona leave. And she also walked to the second floor of the ship. The day was uneventful, and the sea level was calm. The arrest warrant that Zhang Jie had in mind has not yet been released. Time flies too. As if in a blink of an eye, night had already fallen. In a small room where the navigator is, the navigator who was just about to go to bed suddenly heard a knock on the door. Boom, boom, boom. This surprised Hna Shang sat up and asked with a frown. "Who?" There was a moment of silence outside the room. Then came a hoarse voice that was deliberately suppressed. "This is not suitable for talking. Come to the place last night. I believe that this time, even you will be very interested." The hoarse voice fell before the navigator could reply. The figure outside the door had already stepped away. The navigator sat on the bed and frowned in thought, but he didn't get out of bed immediately. What do these guys want to do? Another place. The handymen also returned to their rooms once after a hard day's work. The three of them sat around a wooden table, all of them listless from exhaustion. "Ah, I really have had enough of this kind of life. Those guys, if they really don't do anything, they know how to direct us to do things. Oh, don't complain, I'm patient, as long as the time comes. All this will be over." As he spoke, the room fell into silence. At this time, the three handymen also noticed something was wrong, raised their heads, and frowned suspiciously. Why is there one person missing? Where did Tabor go? While speaking, the three handymen looked at each other. In the next second, they all stood up. But just as they were about to go out to find Tabor, the wooden door of the room was indeed suddenly opened. Squeak! The figure of a middle-aged man also caught the eyes of the three handymen. "And he is Tabor. Where are you going?" Looking at the three handymen who stood up, Tabor asked with a smile. The three handymen were all taken aback by Tabor's sudden question. Immediately afterwards, the three of them looked at each other and said, "No. We actually want to find you. That's right, we found that you were not here, and we still wondered where you went." Having said that, one of the younger handymen noticed Tabor's smiling face. This can't help but make him ask with some doubts. "What's wrong with you? Did something good happen to you? You seem to be in a good mood." Tabor smiled, and let it go meaningfully. "It's not just a good thing. It's a great thing. However, allow me to keep a secret now. There is still one person who hasn't arrived." "Who?" the three handymen asked in confusion. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind Tabor. "I should have said earlier that you don't need to count me in the incident of rebellion. What the hell are you calling me this time?" As the voice fell, the navigator's figure also appeared behind Tabor. Tabor smiled. "I was talking about you, and you came, so I won't continue to play tricks." After finishing speaking, Tabor took out a newspaper and threw it on the wooden table. Snapped. Seeing this, the navigator and the three handymen were taken aback. "Newspaper? What's this for?" Tabor smiled and explained. "This is the newspaper I accidentally found while cleaning today. It's dated just a few days ago. Coincidentally, the news about those guys is recorded here." Hearing Tabor's words, the faces of all the people present changed, and the eyes that looked at the newspaper seemed to be full of enthusiasm. "You can open it and have a look, it's on the tail column of this newspaper." Tabor reminded with a smile. Immediately afterwards, the middle-aged man among the three handymen. He grabbed the newspaper and opened it, and set his sights on the last column of the newspaper. The captain of the battle pirates, Zhang Jie, offers a bounty of 6.6 million Baileys. The guy with the silver hair. His bounty is 3 million Baileys. White mask, 4 million Baileys. Another brat, 3.5 million Baileys. Seeing this series of reward amounts, the three handymen raised their heads in disbelief. At this moment, their pupils were shrinking sharply, and their eyes were trembling violently. Even the navigator on one side couldn't help but widen their eyes after hearing the reward amount. Seeing such great reactions from his companions, Tabor nodded in satisfaction and asked with a smile. Surprised. To be honest, I was surprised when I discovered this. Having said that, Tabor's face suddenly became extremely angry. We let this group of garbage, like ants, drive and enslave. 2 days. For 2 full days, we were driven like cattle. Driven by this bunch of garbage. I'm the pirate Tabor with a bounty of 23 million Baileys. This group of rubbish, the bounty offered by all members is not as high as mine, and I am afraid of them. After all, Tabor looked up at the three handymen. Does any of you have a bounty that is less than 6 million Baileys? At this moment, the expressions of the three handymen all changed. They became stiffer, and all the haze on their faces was swept away. Put on that vicious expression. An ant with 6 million Baileys can also be the captain. My reward is Ferguson with 13 million Baileys. Another middle-aged man said angrily. The 2 younger men also reported their bounties after hearing this. 10 million Baileys, Gros. 9 million Baileys, Augustus. As the last handyman reported his bounty, the rest of the people also turned their attention to the navigator. After hesitating for a while, the navigator announced his bounty and name. 7 million Baileys, Lucchini. Hearing this, Tabor also showed a ferocious smile on his face. Spreading his hands slowly, Tabor glanced around and said, Look, if we randomly pick anyone out here, the bounty offered is higher than that of that little devil's captain. Why does he stand on our heads and shit and pee? Why, do you really think that he is the captain of this ship, and everyone on the ship will listen to him? When I think of my man with 23 million Baileys being used like an animal by that scum with a reward of only 6 million, I can't wait to tear him to pieces. Tabor gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and the veins on his forehead bulged. At this moment, he was very angry. And Ferguson seemed to be exaggerated by Tabor's anger. In the next second, he slammed the table and said angrily, Boom, go and kill that kid now. Cut his body into pieces and throw him into the sea to feed the fish. Tabor raised his hand and stopped Ferguson. At the same time, he turned his head and looked at Lucy Nadeau. How, now you should also understand that we and them are not on the same level, right? Don't tell me that after you know their strength and details, you are still willing to serve these little kids. At the end of the conversation, Tabor looked at Lucchini's eyes and couldn't help but narrowed his eyes slightly. He hoped that Lucchini would change her mind and join their camp. In this way, if it is 5 vs 7, even if the opponent has a weapon and they don't, the chance of winning is as high as 90%. But if Lucchini was against them, it would become 4 vs 8. With the double disadvantage of numbers and weapons, their chances of winning would be greatly reduced. Besides, they have been working hard all day, and their condition is not very good. Working for them is not really counted, it can only be regarded as mutual use. They need navigators, and I need to get out of that ghostly place. Lucchini responded with a smile on her face. At this time, her heart is complicated. From the very beginning, she felt a faint sense of uneasiness. It always feels like something bad is going to happen. But now that I know so much, I definitely can't just pat my ass and leave like this. If you join them, once the uneasiness becomes a reality, then you will suffer. But if they don't join, once they succeed in rebelling, then they have to finish the game. As for neutrality, such an option would not exist. Choosing neutrality is tantamount to choosing to be settled by the Fall Queen. That is when Tabor and the others were discussing fiercely how to execute Zhang Jie. What they don't know is, almost all the members of the pirates' battle are dispatched at this moment. At this time, it was Tabor and the others. The closest moment to Shinigami. The dense and heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor of the cabin. The members of the battle pirates are all heading towards the end of the corridor, the door leading to the deck of the ship. Obito took the lead and walked at the front of the line. Although I can't see the expression on his face at the moment. But it is not difficult to see from the eyes under his white mask that there is killing intent in it. Beside him, Ji Guiwan held the handle of the knife with one hand, with a cold expression on his face. On the side of the hungry wolf's forehead, there were already bulging veins. With his hands in his trouser pockets, he was trying his best to suppress the anger in his heart. Yigu Yutai, who was behind Hungry Wolf, no longer had that harmless and kind face. Instead, it was the obvious gloomy face. Even Tiandao Pain, a cold-faced man, had a rare coldness in his eyes. Those ants-like fellows dare to slander the captain and us in this way. They should be kicked. They should be killed, Hungry Wolf said in a low voice with anger on his face. Heavenly Dao Pain seldom speaks at ordinary times, and at this moment, he rarely speaks out of the blue. We have to teach these ignorant monkeys a painful lesson, so that they can see themselves clearly. Squeak. In front of the team, the sound of the wooden door on the side of the corridor being pushed open spread. Wearing a white dress, with a long knife hanging from his waist, Cypher with emerald green eyes walked out slowly. Immediately afterwards, the wooden door further ahead was pushed open. Squeak. Holding a fishing rod in one hand, Zhang Jie came out of the room yawning. In the room where Tabor and others are located. Although Lucchini vaguely said that she would help herself when the time came. But in Tabor's view, things have stabilized. Seeing this, the impatient Ferguson immediately proposed. Since we have decided, let's take advantage of the night and kill them all at once. As soon as I heard that this is the rhythm that is about to start. Jero and Augustus couldn't help but startled. Why are you in a hurry? Do you want to plan first? What's the plan? How many plans do we need to deal with this group of youngsters? Ferguson frowned, and the more he talked, the more excited he became. Fortunately, Tabor on the side spoke in time to stop it. Calm down, Ferguson. Although Dark Night is a good time, it also depends on the time. We have worked hard for 2 days and need a good rest. Although our strength is stronger than them, our disadvantages in numbers and equipment will undoubtedly make this battle a protracted one. So, raising the spirit is what we have to do now. As for those brats, even if we show mercy, let them live one more night. Hearing Tabor's words, Ferguson also fell into deep thought. After weighing it up, he also felt that what Tabor said was very reasonable, so he nodded in agreement with Tabor's point of view. But it was also at this time. A joking voice full of jokes suddenly came from outside the room. Don't be merciful and let us live another night. Come, if you are capable, ... Come and kill us now. Hear the sudden words. Everyone in the room was startled, and turned their heads to look outside the door with a look of astonishment. Tabor's pupils trembled even more, and he said with an unbelievable astonishment on his face. This. How could it be? Why are they here? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.